Reptichip sets the standard for reptile substrates. Made from the highest quality coconut available anywhere in the world, Reptichip allows enthusiasts and keepers to provide their reptiles with the necessary humidity and thermoregulation required for your animals to thrive. You can support the podcast by heading to reptichip.com/snakeboy or visit the link in the description below. This episode is brought to you in part by Exoterra. If you're as passionate about reptiles and amphibians as I am, you know that quality matters. I use Exoterra products on all my reptile and amphibian enclosures, which is why I'm excited to be partnering with them. From naturalistic decor to innovative lighting and enclosures of all sizes, Exoterra has everything you need for your cold-blooded companions. Exoterra, make your reptiles feel at home. This episode is brought to you in part by Unlimited Exotic Pets. Every day is Veranda Day for Nick Lillis, and it shows. At Unlimited Exotic Pets, Nick produces high-quality monitor lizards with a deep commitment to ethical care practices and top-tier nutrition. These aren't just pets. They're responsibly bred, ethically raised animals. Whether you're looking for a new companion, starting a breeding project, or anything in between, Nick has you covered. Unlimited Exotic Pets, keeping and breeding quality without limitations. Love reptiles? Don't miss this. If you're passionate about reptiles, amphibians, and everything cold-blooded, Reptiles magazine is a must-have. Each issue is packed with expert care tips, stunning photography, and the latest news in the reptile world. Whether you're a seasoned herpetologist or just starting your reptile journey, this magazine has something for you. Subscribe today and stay informed on the best ways to care for your scaly friends. For only $14.99 a year, you can step outside your algorithm and get exposure to things that you wouldn't normally see or learn about. My family reads Reptiles magazine, and you should too. Visit subscribe.reptilesmagazine.com to get started. This is the Expert and the Idiot podcast. If you like the show and you'd like to support us, there's a link to our Patreon in the description below. Some benefits include getting access to new episodes up to a month in advance. There's also links to USARK and USARK Florida. If you're not already a member, please sign up. Enjoy the show. This is exciting. Welcome, Dr. Zac Loughman, aka Dr. Crawdad, professor at West Liberty University and host of the Colubrid and Colubroid Radio. I'm super stoked to have you on, man. I've got quite a bit of stuff to get to here, and I kind of just want to like jump right into it. Because I'm a fan of that. Yeah, you're. I know, like normally I do the whole, oh, how'd you get into reptiles and all that. And I'd like to, talk to you about some of that and everything. And I think maybe it'll come up organically along the way.
Sure.
But there's just too much important stuff to talk about. And I want to be as efficient as possible with our time. So It really all comes from a study, a recent study that found juvenile Western hognose snakes raised in an enriched environment had significantly larger brain volumes, particularly in the posterior brain, midbrain, and hindbrain, compared to those in a standard enclosure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the study suggests that neuroplasticity in snakes is stimulated by environmental complexity. So I think that's really cool. But at the same time, I talked to Nick Mutton, and he was like, brain size means nothing, and then this was just a one-on-one conversation with him, and having this back and forth with him was actually good because I ended up looking into things, right? And I found that modern human brains are actually smaller than our ancestors. and they've been decreasing in size. They're about like 10 to 13%, I think, smaller than they were 10,000 years ago. And Nick suggested that this is just domestication. Humans domesticated themselves.
Okay.
We chose to be less violent. We select less violent people in our communities. And by essentially weeding out violent people, the structures in your brain, and stop me when I'm just talking on my ass. But like I researched this a little bit, and I want this to be, part of the conversation. Same thing with dogs. I found, and a lot of animals, when you domesticate any animal, including humans, the brain gets smaller. And a lot of that is through selective breeding. It's almost like the violent parts of the brain are larger. Is that the case with snakes? Is a bigger brain better? And is that like what we need to find with, or is that what are we trying to find with giving enrichment, is to make your brain have a bigger snake? And what does it really mean at the end of the day?
So before I go any further, because there will probably be like, out of the 7 billion people on our planet, the one person that studies snake brain size and its relationship to intelligence is going to listen to this. So I am not.
I doubt it.
Yeah, a snake brain biologist. I'll throw that out there. I do know a little bit about, brain size and response in brain size and hormones and all that kind of stuff. And to make a very long story short, Nick is correct. Part of the reason why our brains got smaller through, not necessarily domesticate. I don't know if we really domesticated ourselves, so that's an interesting thing to think about. What I do think we did is we figured out, it's a hell of a lot easier to live on this floodplain and grow potatoes and occasionally eat a fish than it is to be roaming the floodplain, trying to tackle a damn deer, kill it, and eat it.
Yeah.
And when you go to that more sedentary lifestyle, there's just parts of your brain that you're going to be using in a different way. You might be using more of your cerebral cortex for like thinking and problem solving. Not that you don't do that when you're hunting, but it's just it's very different. Like when you're sitting there thinking, how am I going to fix this problem? You're using more of an intellect than an instinctual response. Whereas, and if you've ever been herping or hunting or doing anything like that, I can speak to this because I spent a lot of time outside chasing animals. When I see the critter that I'm trying to find and it's darting across, I don't sit there and calculate an algebraic equation to figure out how I'm going to catch it. I'm just like, tackle the bitch. Like, that's the response. It's a very different part of your brain. So if you kind of take that whole idea and segue it over to the snakes, what I actually think the brain size in this instance is showing is it's kind of going the opposite way of what Nick was talking about, where they're already in the process of domestication. And anybody that doesn't think once you get to like a F3, F4, F5 generation that we aren't heading quickly down the path of domestication doesn't understand how domestication works, because we are artificially selecting the attributes that we want. A neon pink hognose snake, and I study hognose snakes in the wild, that thing's going to be picked off immediately by a raptor. Like, it should just roll over and die because it's going to die. Like that's the way nature works. It might be the one that lives the Disney experience and somehow survives, but in reality, natural selection is going to take that guy out. So in human care, though, we get the pink one and we're like, oh my God, it's pink. We got to keep that one. Well, that pink one, then we select for it, lives in a box normally, in a rack, and it's just not overly stimulated. I think what happened maybe was brain size went down with that process. And then when we stimulated their brain and put them in a more instinctual environment, i.e. an enriched environment, brain size went up because now we're using parts of our brain that we didn't use before. And it may not necessarily be, it may also be, I don't know. It may not be that they're like their cognitive ability is now firing through the roof. It might literally be now we're using our chemosensory modalities way more than we were before, and we have to compute what those modalities are telling us, which then causes the brain, to get bigger. I've spent a lot of time with that particular study. I have things I like about the study. I have things I don't like about the study. Actually, at Colubrid Fest, Kayla Martin and I gave a talk on enrichment, and I used that study to kind of show what happens when we enriched. Now, the one thing we can't, all right, well, that's not true, actually. Let me back that up. The one thing we can't negate about that study, that's what I'm going to say, is that they did show brain size got bigger in an enriched environment, and I believe it got bigger through use. It's up to interpretation, whether that's like the end-all be-all to show and justify that enrichment is the way. But the fact that it did get larger, as a biologist, that tells me that enrichment equals response. And that's what it tells me. It doesn't necessarily tell me that form of enrichment increases dramatically the quality of life of the hognose snake. What it does tell me as a scientist is you enrich, over time, there's a response. I think the next step, the next iteration in that line of research is to figure out what that response really is. That's the part that I don't think we know yet. And by is, like when you're talking about positive and negative, and that's very subjective. One of the things we talked about at Colubrid Fest with the enrichment talk is there's this whole idea of negative enrichment. And and it's basically, one way to look at negative enrichment is you cause a fear response in an animal. When you cause a fear response in an animal, that's not the homeostatic state. The homeostatic state is the state you're in all the time. So in theory, you now have a new set of hormones, you have a new set of cognitive response. And when you really think about enrichment at a fundamental basal level, what you're trying to do is cause some kind of change in the environment, some kind of stimulus in the environment that leads to a behavioral response. And we don't talk about like picking up our snakes and lassoing them and then chucking them back in the cage. Like, and I'm not promoting that before anybody flames me. But like, if you think about it, if you did that every day, we're not doing this, I'm willing to bet you would get a different brain in that snake. Well, what does that mean? That's the part of the study that I feel like needs more investigation. Is like, okay, their brains got bigger. What does that mean? Like, I don't know if we really know what that means. And in the paper, they kind of went down this path of like, it means they're overly stimulated and their quality of life is better. And I just don't, and I'm not being critical of the authors if they listen to this, I'm just being a scientist. I don't know if we can say that yet. I would like to look at something like corticosterone levels. Corticosterone levels that's the stress hormone, cortisol in humans, corticosterone in reptiles. And we're doing a lot of that actually at West Liberty with different species and whatnot. But I think it'd be really cool to do that experiment again. Now that we've kind of shown that the stimulus leads to an increased brain size, and then just take the poop out of the cage, and you can do this assay where you look at corticosterone levels and see what those levels are between the sterile and the enriched environment. Or even better, present the snakes with some kind of stimulus that they have to respond to, and then look at the stress response. That to me is the more important question. Is like, so you give them this enriched environment, they're using their brains more. Does it make them cope better with human care? Because what I've learned over the past 9 years now doing ZooSci and dealing with things like crypto in our collection, and then just having the wonderful opportunity to study this stuff, is that if you can have a snake that is more resilient to stimulus, it's probably going to be more resilient to disease, because a lot of these diseases like serpentivirus, nido, whatever you want to call it, and crypto and colubrids, it seems like the snakes get it, and then you can get it and still live a very long life. Now, I'm not promoting like keeping crypto positive snakes in your collection. I feel like there's a lot of caveats I have to say with this conversation because people don't have common sense. Anyway, but like the actual manifestation of crypto and crypto taking out the snake, that seems to be highly linked to stress. Same thing with Nido. They can have Nido and be chugging along fine. They get stressed out, and then you get the bubbles and the saliva and the spit. So stress management is a much bigger deal in snakes and keeping snakes healthy, I think, than anybody gives it credit for. And if an enriched snake using its brain is able to cope better, then I would argue that would be like, that to me is the magic bullet. Because as a keeper and a breeder, we want to make sure that our animals are living the best life they can. And if they are calm, content, corticosterone levels are down, you're going to get a better breeding response, and you're going to get a healthier, bigger, badder snake. And so like that next step is what I would love to see somebody do.
Interesting. Okay. So yeah. So, reading it seemed like there was we did X and therefore it is better. And and so instantly that almost gives ammunition to the other side, in my opinion, where you're essentially saying like anybody who's anti-enrichment, here you go. Now you can say that this is fake science. You know what I'm saying? Instead of saying, I like to steel man things, especially when I mean, look at my enclosures, right? Like I'm not like, I want my snakes to have the best life that they can possibly have. And I want them to be able to hide, be able to come out and bask. I want to be able to observe their behavior, and I want to keep them as naturalistically as I possibly can indoors within reason. Right. And so if I'm going to have an argument, I want to make sure that I can back it up and really say definitively, this is what it told us. This is not what it told us, you know, because otherwise it's just, it's just observation and that's it.
Yeah. That's in science. It's very, how do I say what I'm trying to say here? Hold on a second. Some scientists, all right, I'm going to use myself as an example. Early in my career, I'm 46. So my mid to late 20s, early 30s, I would get a result. And this is when I was just working with crayfish. And I would be like, oh my God, I solved this immortal question no one had the answer to. And then I would write the paper like that. Like when I would write the publication up, it would be like, and now we know what all crayfish do. And now 20 years later, 15 years later, I look back on that version of myself and I'm like, you were an idiot. Like, like that's not what you found. I wish I could peer review some of my papers from the first part of my career for myself. Like I was reading one the other day with one of my grad students. It was like, this is hot garbage. So I think, and it was because I was going more like absolute with the results than just simply saying, here is a piece to this puzzle. I'm going to go out now and try to get the answer to 10 more pieces to the puzzle. And maybe when I get 10 to 15 answers looking at this puzzle from many different angles, then I will actually be able to say with some level of definitive response, this is what is going on. With this particular paper, I think that the discussion kind of went down a path that went away from neutrality and into one side's argument and basically almost saying, use this, like you were saying. Yeah. And one of the big things, I preach it in CCR, I preach it to my students. I do not like when things get weaponized. I don't, we don't have to do that. It's not necessary. But I also understand that people can get very emotional and passionate and allied to a side of an argument. And once you get entrenched in that dogma, you want to support your side. And so, I'm not going to discredit the authors for doing that. But at the same time, I do think it would have been nice to see in the discussion kind of like a little bit of a discussion about like next steps and how this here's further questions. Like, I remember reading it, and I didn't read it recently, but I read it about 2 months ago, and thinking like, why didn't we just do that?
Yeah.
So, but the one thing I will say though, in defense of the paper, is I read the paper trying to remain neutral, because it's funny, you and I have the exact same approach. I don't like to defend something till I have solid evidence that is objective as hell, you know? Um, And but when I read the paper, I did think, I did not have Nick's response. I was like, okay, there's definitely something going on here. And I think that this ultimately, if we get those additional puzzle pieces we were talking about, could be some strong evidence that we should be doing enrichment for our animals. And it seems bizarre to even put that in a subjective statement. Like, that should be objective, by the way. I will die on that hill. They didn't evolve in a plastic box with pine bedding. Like, that was not present in the mid-Jurassic when snakes showed up.
With a tiny puddle next to them.
Yeah. There you go. So, but no, I think it's a cool paper. I just really feel like it's a foundational paper. It's like at the beginning of a future series of, of research publications. So
yeah, it's a stepping off
point.
Okay. And yeah, it's, I wholeheartedly agree with you. I feel like enrichment is being weaponized, where if I say, I love enrichment, I want to enrich my snake's enclosure, one side, their eyes are going to glaze over and they're like, what is this idiot talking about? And then the other side, if you say, it's, maybe who knows what it's doing, then it's like, no, we know everything now, because of this one study, so it's like, it so easily goes, and you know how it is nowadays, everything's polarized, nobody can agree on anything.
No, it's ridiculous. Clint and I try to stay, we ride the middle on most things. And then on some things we do kind of pick a side. So like on the enrichment side of things, I think snakes should be enriched. I mean, if you look in the background here, there's vivariums all around me here.
Absolutely.
But I also use racks, which historically have always been the model of sterile keeping, the like arch enemy of anybody that's pro enrichment. And I think that you can use a rack and enrich it. I'm sorry. You can do that. If you have a small fossorial snake, like bamboo rat snakes, great example. Oreocryptophis. These little guys, some of them like the coxeye, I don't know the common name for them. They can get to be a solid 3.5 foot. But some of the other subspecies, they max out at about 15, 18 inches. If you put them, and they live on the forest floor, and they're crepuscular. They come out in the evening, they come out in the morning, and it's very rare to see them out during the day. So if you set up a rack tub and you create, a pretty heterogeneous mixture for substrate, and put down in there some hidden cavities and things like that, and you throw it into your rack, they don't have lighting. That could be a horrible thing. That could not be a horrible thing. We can figure that out, But for a forest-dwelling fossorial snake that likes it to be dark, I don't see how that's a bad thing, But at the same time, my blessed false water cobras, I'll fight someone and die on the hill. You should never put one in a rack as an adult. They're just too damn big. They crap all the time. The ammonia, the ventilation alone. Oh my God. You're doing, like, you hate yourself if you do that. Because when you open that tub up, you're going to die.
Yeah.
So I feel like we just need to kind of look at the tools and view racks and enclosures and vivs and lights and heaters and like all that stuff as tools in our tool chest that we're going to ultimately use to create the best environment for our animals.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. I mean, I utilize racks and tubs myself for animals that are in quarantine, and young animals that are not yet ready to go into an enclosure like you see behind me. Yep. And I think that they are fantastic for that because they are totally climate controlled. It's the lowest low stress option. They're more likely to eat, but I can still give them bedding. I can give them toilet paper tubes or paper towel tubes and give them, new stimulus and things that will enrich their environment. It's just in a different, smaller plastic box for the time being, temporarily.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
No, right there with you, man. I was just on Joe DiStefano's show, Collubrium Corruption, and he asked me, like, what is the one thing that all of herpetoculture should do? And it was like a gut reaction. I was like, relax. Like,
Yeah.
we all just need to take a deep ass breath, breathe out, do good for your animals, but like the tribalism, put it away. Like, this is dumb. Like,
Yeah.
And if there's data and you don't like it, tough. I don't know what else to say. Like, as a science-driven human being, you should be able to get evidence. The evidence supports the alternative to what you think, and then have faith in changing your idea. We live in a world right now, and we all know this, where you can literally say to someone will walk up to you and say 2 + 2 is not 4. And you're like, what? Huh? And you're like, oh, well, I saw it on the internet. They changed it. And you're like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, if the evidence and the facts are one way, just ride with it, man.
Yeah.
I don't understand why we have to be so set in our ways that we can't shift. I've shifted. I've oh my God, my way of keeping since when I started back into this thing around 2016, I had one philosophy of keeping. I am like all the way. No, I'm over here, like off the screen right now from where I started. And I like that. I have a weird sense of pride in the fact that I was not willing. I put my animals first, my beliefs second. And if I got the evidence to change my belief, I did. And so I just don't understand why we can't do that.
It has to be maybe hard to scale for some people, where it's, maybe you started keeping snakes back in the early 90s, and now you're at this point where you have a collection that is hundreds upon hundreds of animals.
Yeah.
And you hear these things that maybe you think, oh yeah, maybe I wish I could do it that way, but what, I need a warehouse, and then it's like, and I want everybody in the hobby to appreciate the people that have really figured things out in this hobby too. And that's the other thing, is when there's like this complete lack of respect for the people that put all the roads and the telephone poles and all the infrastructure in for the hobby to lead us to the hobby that we are at today.
100%. 100%. And those individuals that have the buildings based off one set of keeping, I do think it is insanely disingenuous for new keepers coming in 2020 on to then look at someone whose livelihood and in existence is based off this facility they built, and then just shame them for not changing everything in the infrastructure that they created. Like, I also don't think that's right. And I don't know. Like I said, relax. Like, everybody just, put the egos away a little bit, take a seat. Now, if somebody is obviously, like I just got done saying, it might sound hypocritical that if I see somebody keeping a 7-foot false water cobra in a tub, I'm probably not going to just turn a blind eye. I might say something, but if I were to say something, it's not going to be like, you son of a bitch, POS, blah, blah, blah. It's going to be like, hey, you might want to consider that, because the other flip side to this is, if we take care of our animals and we put their lives first, which we all should do, and we manage their stress, we're going to get a better response from them. It's a very utilitarian way of looking at it, but if you increase enrichment and lower the stress load or increase the mental resiliency of your animal, there's a pretty good chance your animal's going to live longer. And I'm going into Clint's world with marketing. And if it lives longer and you're a breeder, whether we like it or not, it's going to produce more eggs, and you might get more financial response out of that particular animal. Now, that's not why I keep animals, but I understand there's a lot of snakes in this collection that came from that environment. And whether we want to admit it or not, we absolutely have to have those people. Otherwise, we wouldn't have the animals that we all have.
Yep.
That is just a simple truth. So,
yeah, it's so what is that, and what about good stress versus bad stress?
Sure.
Because that has to be a thing, right? Because I know that, like, if I go work out out in my garage, which I do, 5 to 6 times a week. If I'm doing that, and if a nurse were to be sitting there and take my blood pressure and my cortisol levels and, everything, right? It would look like I was in terrible shape and about to die in that moment. Right. So, but that stress, that temporary stress is beneficial. Is it the same thing with snakes? How do you find that balance between beneficial and not beneficial stress?
I can't say definitively, but I can't, like, snakes are vertebrates, and this is just a general vertebrate thing. With the good stress and the bad stress, the bad stress is definite in the ethology world, in the zoo world. Negative stress would be stress that's associated with fear, with I think I'm going to die, not necessarily just a physiological response to activity, but rather like, oh God, things are really bad here. I need to exit this environment. But that being said, we use that stress. Every python that we put 2 male pythons together to combat, with the combat, there's a winner and a loser. And during the actual fighting, I'm sure there's a physiological response. We know there's a physiological response because testosterone's going through the roof, which is what then makes it so the victor then wants to go mate with the female immediately following combat. But the male that loses, he's not like, yes, no sex for me. like that doesn't happen.
I know that they've tested this with MMA fighters, and the losers of the fight, their testosterone drops.
Yeah. Yep.
Which is nuts. And the one that wins, their hormones increase.
No, the win, when your hormones increase, that's because you're now dominant and you put a lot of physiological effort into that fight, right? You don't want to burn any more energy than you have to. So when you win and you start strutting around and you're like screaming and pounding on your chest or whatever, there's some evolution there because you want to truly send the message to the other individual, I beat your ass, don't try it again.
Yeah.
Because you don't know if you fight immediately after that, you might have put more effort into the initial fight. And now you're going to get your ass kicked. And the loser having the drop in testosterone, that makes a lot of biological sense because you just lost. I mean, imagine what would happen if your response after you got your ass beat was to get more testosterone and then just fight hard. Like, you're going to die. Like, that's what's
I think happen. I know that guy.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So with the snakes, though, you have that dominant male who won. The subordinate male, he's not doing great after that combat bout. But when you put him away, there is going to be this moment of, I'm still alive. Cool. Which is, whether it is a weird form of a positive response. I did that and I lived. Yeah. And that's what you need to do it again, if you know what I'm saying. And so that there's a weird endorphin hit that might hit them after that. Because if you think about it, if animals just responded every time a male loses a fight for anything, and your response is, well, I suck, you're not going to be getting any heterogeneity into that population at all if all the males that lose aren't trying to reproduce. That is a horrible evolutionary strategy. And the other thing that ends up happening is a lot of times with animals in particular, and humans and snakes, is the loser now has to come to a realization, which is, I'm not as strong as that guy. I still want to reproduce. So how do I reproduce without fighting? And that's what then leads to like subordinate males and this whole idea of satellite males. And
that's where Jeff Bezos came from.
There you go. Exactly. And there's been studies done on all kinds of animals. I don't know so much. Well, no, it's been done with garter snakes, actually, that show that those loser males actually, in many populations of animals, are responsible for far more paternity. Because it turns out with a lot of animals, females don't want the testosterone-laden alpha male. They're cued into the sensitive guy, the beta, who reproductively is actually the alpha because they're getting more of their genes into the population.
Wow.
Yeah. And if you want your head to explode, and I don't understand. I have tried to learn this at least half a dozen times for my ecology class, and then I taught biology of snakes last spring, and I was like, damn it, I'm going to understand this. I still don't freaking understand it, so I can't talk about it intelligently. But up in the snake dens in Manitoba, the red-sided garter snakes that live up there, they are some of the most northerly snakes on our planet. And so their activity season is like 4 months. So they've got to come out of hibernation, mate. The females then have to raise a brood, drop the babies, and then the babies got to get a couple meals in them. And that whole cycle has to happen in 4 months, which is crazy. And so what they do is the males are mating with the females like as they're coming out of the dens. And so you get these giant, they call them snake balls, but basically it's just a female comes out and there's like 30 to 60 males all over her. And people started to study this system and see, like, at face value, if you read the first papers on it, it says the females come out and they are bred by the largest males. Then people actually started to do like crazy things where they would catch the animals, pit tag them, or put little marks on their head, keep tabs of who's doing what. And they found out that there's males, and the females are large, by the way. Large male red-sided garter snakes, they will wrap themselves up around a female. They will hang out with the females. They'll cover themselves in the scent of the female. And then they will emerge out of the den and just beeline it as far away from the den as possible. Well, they smell like a female. They're the size of a female. So all these males are like, holy crap, look at that one. And they're all chasing him, but he's pretending to be a her. And so he literally pulls away males. Sometimes he lets males copulate with him. Once you think about that for a second. Okay. And then turns around and beelines it back to the den and then mates with the females because there's fewer competitors there.
Whoa.
Like that level of cognitive ability, I'm sorry, that's an animal that's strategizing. That's an animal that's thinking. That's an animal that's got a mastery of a situational awareness of its environment. And we're going to take that and in herpetoculture, it's a garter snake. And I cannot tell you how many times I've heard people go, oh, it's just a garter snake. Garter snakes are freaking brainiacs, man. I love keeping garter snakes. But you've got something that has a behavioral modality that's complex. And then you're going to like keep that particular species in a rack. Like, you're just, as a keeper, you're missing out on all these crazy environments. The only snakes that are in my living room are my red-sided garter snakes because they're always doing something. They're just so much fun to watch. So in that instance, though, we've got positive stress, negative stress, and that's just one example. And the reality of it is we've studied the behavioral ecology of snakes. We've only probably studied maybe 1 or 2% of all the snakes on our planet. If you really dove in and understood their mating systems, I think we would find out that they're a little bit more complex than we thought. I don't think they're all doing what the Manitoba garter snakes are doing. But, I do like this body of research. That same lab group that put out the hognose snake paper, they're the group that keeps putting out these behavioral studies on snakes where they say things like snakes have friends and stuff like that. And if you actually read the papers, they're pretty interesting results. Like, we're actually doing that right now with false water cobras at the university, just seeing like, do they hang out if given the choice to hang out with each other? Do they hang out with their siblings? Do they hang out with animals that aren't related to them? And the results so far, like I already knew falsies. I thought that they might be kind of intelligent or have at least behavioral complexity. And the poor student that's doing this project, it's like a freaking algebra project, keeping track of who's hanging out with who. And there's like 60 snakes in the stuff. It's insane.
Oh my gosh.
They don't just go to the closest hide. Like they are definitely going around the arenas we have in pairs. And sometimes they hang out with their siblings. Sometimes they hang out with another individual. It's been very, very eye-opening to me. So I don't know if we went tangential on that one, but
well, no, I mean, that's super interesting. The fact that big male garter snake is like playing the long con and even like like hooking up with other dudes.
Yes.
And like you have to figure that those dudes, like once they do that, they probably think like, oh, I did it. Like
That's
I
exactly what they
fulfilled.
think. And then they go away. Like they go out to their summer retreats. So,
and meanwhile, that guy's just like, idiot.
Yeah, exactly. Or the things I do to get some. That might be the other thing he's thinking. Like,
my word, that's crazy. Now, do snakes have sex for fun?
We don't know the answer to that. I have no clue. I will say I have definitely seen snakes copulating outside of a reproductive season. I don't know if that is. All right, so let me back this up. Even though I'm like the curmudgeon, crusty scientist with the fancy degrees,
dude, you're
I'm
10 years
like
older than me.
Zach, and I do think that even reptiles do things just because they like to do it. Like, I don't think everything in their world is this cost-benefit analysis and, I just ate something, therefore I must bask. Like, I got boas right over there that are basking and they haven't eaten in 2 weeks. They're just basking. Like, I think that they like to be warm, so they're basking, you know what I mean? So, wouldn't surprise me if they did. I can tell you the garters are the ones that are those little bastards just are mating all the goddamn time. Like they have seasonal periods where there's more mating. And you can tell when those are happening that there's definitely like hormones and your classic mating system stuff. But then like in the middle of July when they're mating, I'm kind of like, well, I guess you just felt like it today. Like there's no reason for them to be mating then, biologically speaking.
Yeah.
So
interesting. I know that, it's like, so help me logic this out with your smartness.
Okay.
I have an Argentine boa, right? And when I'm in the room, she will push on the glass and there's some give, right? And it makes like a rattling noise. And she'll kind of do that a few times and I will open the door and let her out and she comes out and she goes into the storage area under the enclosure. She only does it when I'm in the room. Like this isn't something that she's not just sitting there doing it whenever I'm not around, right? I have cameras in the room. I know what she does when I'm not in the room. So this is something that I've been watching for a while. Now, have I conditioned her to do that? Or does she like know that I'm in here and therefore that means that she's allowed to come out? Like, I don't know, like what comes first there? Is it the chicken or the egg? Am I putting too much of my human emotion into her? Or like, what do you think about that?
I think that you've absolutely done inadvertent operant conditioning or what we call associative learning. And the reason why I know this is I have the exact same experience at school. So up at school, I have a office that's like a rectangle and it's very deep. It's narrow, but it's deep. And so I think that my office is like 10 or 12 feet deep and then about 8 feet wide. And on one whole wall, it's just cages, just like what you see here.
Yeah.
There. And so I've got my big false water cobras are in there in 8-foot enclosures. And then I've got a series of smaller vivariums that are like right at my desk. Like I'm working here. They're just like these guys. And then there's 2 racks in there I use for grow outs and things like that. And when I walk into the office, whenever anybody walks into my office, all the heads come out of the hides. It's actually like some students have noticed it and it freaks them out. They're like, they're watching me. I'm like, no, they're not. And then I was kind of like, well, maybe they are. You know what I mean? But what I realized after this was pointed out to me a couple years ago is that the heads come out. There's a lot of tongue flicking. And then especially with those big ass false water cobras, they then come out and I'll be typing and I feel like I'm being watched. And I look up and there's 6 snakeheads staring at me from, and the reason why is that, as Mike Stefani says, I'm the food monkey. And I think they know he's got to be here for us to get the rats. That's step 1, if you know what I mean. Now, some people are going to interpret that as they love me. I don't think they love me. I think they know for me to get what I need, that thing has to be here. And I think the way they know I'm in the room is that they don't necessarily see me. I think I have a very unique smell. I'm a big guy, so there's a lot of me off-gassing crap to them, and they pick up those chemosensory, my smell, and they're like, all right, that smell equals rats. You see what I'm saying? So in the case of your boa, there might be the thermal environment under the cage might be better than the thermal environment in the cage. Who knows? We just know she wants to go there. She knows she can't get there until the stimulus shows up. You're the stimulus. So when you show up, she starts doing the pushing. Now, on one end of that continuum, we can say she knows Adam, and she's pushing to send you a signal to open it up. On another end of that continuum, we can say she senses Adam, she pushes here, and somehow the door magically opens, and she doesn't necessarily understand that you are what is opening the door. But what she does know is that stimulus gets me this response. And I definitely... Well, anybody that keeps snakes knows this. We just don't know it. If you have a rack and you open the rack and the snake fires out every time you open the rack, it's doing that because when you open the rack, the food shows up. So it has learned this response equals food. And carnivorous animals have to do that. An herbivore, all they have to do is be like plants, put their head down. They're there. Like that's the extent. A carnivore has to figure out where its prey is coming from, what its prey is doing, how to get to its prey, how to outthink its prey. And in the case of human care and domestication, by the way, that simple act of open tub, give rat, close tub, after you do that about 5 to 10 times, they very quickly figure out when this tub opens up, there's food. You can break them of that habit. We have a study going on at school right now that another professor's doing. She studies ambassador animals in zoos. So like in the zoo world, there's this great big question of when we have these education animals, are we exploiting them by like bringing them out for people to pet and walk around the zoo with them? Is their welfare okay? Blah, 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 blah. And so one of the things that Dr. Barber's studying right now is like, can you break a snake of biting? And how long after that do you break it? Well, we have a butt ton of king snakes. And if there's any snake on earth that bites first, thinks later, it's a freaking king. And so what they started doing is they have one group, they open the tubs only to feed them. They have another group where they just open the tubs. And then they'll open the tubs and feed them. And what they found is after about 5 trials, that behavior stops. So with that being said, that's that whole associative learning. They're learning that sometimes when this tub opens, I don't get food. Therefore, I shouldn't respond like food's going to be there all the time. And it doesn't really seem like rocket science to me, but to some people, this is kind of like a whoa thing. And other snakes that I've had, they've never responded. I also think that the broad ecological category a snake falls into determines how they'll respond that way. If you have an active pursuit predator, like an indigo or a crebo or a false water cobra, or even a king snake to a certain extent, those are the animals that are going to very quickly learn and respond. If you have an ambush predator, it's in their DNA to sit here. I sit here when I'm happy. I sit here when I'm sad. I sit here when there is prey, when there's not prey. And we anthropomorphize those animals. And then we'll say like, well, they're stupid. Like ball pythons get this all the time. Blood pythons get this all the time. I would argue, I have bloods. I know you do too. Blood python, if you learn their subtle cues, those are one of the most reactive snakes you can own. It's just, they're not moving all the time. That huffy puffy thing they do, their eyes start twitching. Yeah. They are very cued into what's going on in their environment. But where they live in Indonesia, they just don't move. Because if you move, that's a cue to your prey, and now your prey gets away. Or it's a cue to the water monitor that's going to eat your ass. So you just sit there. See? So I think you have to look at what the snake's doing, but that's my answer to that one.
So you bring up a lot of that was so fascinating. Thank you. So interestingly enough, most of my snakes have a feed response when I go in the enclosure. And even though it's very easy to, tap them with a hook and you break that response, the one snake that doesn't have that response is my Argentine boa. and I feed her. So she gets like an extra large rat, right?
Mhm.
And they're sopping wet. And if that juice gets down into her coconut husk, it stinks, right? It smells
Yeah.
like a wet dog laid down in there.
Mhm.
So I started feeding her in a Rubbermaid tote, and she never thinks she's going to get fed when that door opens, because
Yeah.
I take her out, I put her in a Rubbermaid tote, and then now when I open the Rubbermaid tote, guess what happens?
Oh, she's
She
on.
she flails around with her mouth open. Like, I know the rat is here now.
Yeah.
Is that like, do you think that if somebody had like 2 or 3 snakes, that it would be wise to feed their snake in a Rubbermaid tote, so that way there's no feed response in the enclosure ever and you avoid that? Or do you think that then you're robbing them of that hunting behavior in their more natural environment?
I think if you don't want to get bit, put your snake in a Rubbermaid tote. That's my response. I have Rubbermaid totes. So I cohab my bull snakes, and then I cohab my male false water cobras. And for both of those species of snake, if you present one prey item, it's going to get real interesting real quick. I've literally had false water cobras. One grabbed the front end of the rat, one grabbed the back end of the rat. They ripped the rat in half. And when they ripped it, they went like this, and just the cage just got covered in blood. It looked like a freaking horror show in there. So after that happened once, I was like, never again. So the males are the only ones that get cohab. The females all have their own enclosures. So now I just simply open up the glass, very much like what you do with your Argentine. And those particular false water cobras, when you open up the glass, they're more curious than anything. So they kind of come out, they get a little amped. What's really cool is one of them will actually come out of the tub, out of the enclosure, and he starts frantically looking for the tub, the food tub. So he has figured out, like, oh man, this is where the rats are. I don't necessarily think he thinks I've got to get in here, and then I think in his predatory brain, this space is where the food is. I'm going to that space. It's super cool, by the way.
That is so cool. And that makes me appreciate my Argentine boa that much more now, because it's not just, oh, she's a super chill snake. I've conditioned her to be super chill inside of her enclosure.
And this is also part of the domestication process, which we all need to accept. Once you get into those F2, F3, F4 generations, we're starting to get pretty far away from nature. All you need to do is look at a highlighter yellow jungle and then see what they look like up in Australia, northern Australia. And some of them, very rarely, but occasionally you do find the bright yellow, black one. Most of them are that kind of yellowish, brownish color, because that's what's advantageous. Well, if you think about when we're like breeding our snakes, if you're just breeding for a paint job, you don't care about the behavior. But I definitely know that there's some people in the colubrid world, like with corn snakes in particular, were like, that snake's an asshole, I'm not breeding it. This one's decent. And we've done research at school. We just got to get the freaking grad student to write their thesis. But the data very clearly shows that there is a genetic component to behavior. I have I have 2 false water cobras that are the most food aggressive snakes I've ever seen in my life. And I have 2 that are just like somewhat chill. Okay. So to do this experiment, I thought it would be a really good idea to breed the 2 food aggressive ones together. And their babies were insane. They bit.
Wow.
It was bite first, think later. And then the other clutch, they were super chill. Some of them bit. There's variation in a clutch. Some of them didn't really eat that well. Most of them ate fine, would like hood out, do their thing, but they weren't overly aggressive in the passive clutch. And that food aggressive clutch with the parents, now I like spicy snakes. They're my favorite. So I was like giggling like a deranged 10-year-old every time I got to mess with those guys. But I will flat out tell you, they were like little nightmares. And if you think about it, this makes evolutionary sense. When you're out in the wild and you got a wide range, false water cobras have a massive range. It's not small. It's like almost all of Brazil. And then they go down into Bolivia, Argentina, Paraguay, places like that. In certain environments, you can afford to be a hyper aggressive animal because the predator abundance might be lower. And if you have that hyper aggressive food response, not aggression in like I want to fight you, kill you, but I'm defensive and I want to go get my food. In a predator declined environment, that's going to be really advantageous, and you're going to get bigger faster, and then outcompete your competition, and just have just be better all around. But if you are that way in a predator rich environment as a baby, and you're slithering around, and basically like running around with like, "F you, I won't do what you tell me." Yeah, well, the Jabiru stork's going to eat your ass and you're dead. So in that environment, being passive is advantageous. And so the snakes have this continuum of behavior in their genes. So that's our Play-Doh then with captive breeding to work with. I think that it is completely possible with selective breeding to breed into our animals a preferred behavioral phenotype. We always do the paint job. I care more about like something that, well, I'm the worst person to say this because I don't care if they want to kill me. I think they have character. But for a lot of people, they don't want to deal with that crap. And we can breed that out of our snakes, which is a really neat thing to think about. And after we did that particular thesis, that one really opened my eyes. Like I was kind of like, wow, why don't we do this more than we think about? Like I think about water pythons. If you get a water python from New Guinea, they're notoriously prickish. If you get a Queensland water python, they're notoriously chill. And I've thought about water pythons for a long time. If you go out into the wild, are those Queensland water pythons all chill or are they prickish? Could our Queensland water pythons be more chill because the founding stock we got from Australia, which was this limited gene pool, we just might have had those passive animals, and that's what we had to work with. You see what I'm saying? So,
and decades
stuff like that, I think, is pretty cool.
Like decades of captive breeding too, right? In comparison to something that might be F1 or farm raised or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah, and I mean, is there a snake that has a worse rap than blood pythons, and yet, like all my snakes, they're super chill, but I got them from Caranoris and they've been captive bred. They're martyr lines. So they've been captive bred for generations now. And I specifically, that's, paint job matters, but also I'm like, I like that one. How's its personality?
Yeah.
Is it pretty laid back, and recently I just got I got a Beset line, Argentine boa, another male. And I was looking at all the pictures and I'm like, God, they're all so beautiful. They're all going to change so dramatically over the course of the next 3 years. So what does it even matter right now? Some are super light and incredible. Some are really dark. I couldn't make up my mind. It was 6 males. I couldn't decide. And I ended up just saying the biggest, most robust one. That's the most important thing.
That is what I ask for everything. I don't like the nightmare of things that don't eat. It drives me crazy. I think I have actually tailored my collection now to mostly garbage disposal snakes that are going to eat every time. Like that to me is the most important quality of an animal before I'll actually decide if I want to dive into it. And when I ask for offspring, when they're like, well, this one's got a stripe, this one's got, I want the biggest one that eats the most. That's it. But if you think about it, I might be selecting for that aggressive quality. And aggressive might not even be the right word, but because of that, so it's kind of fun to think about this stuff. This is the stuff I think about when I'm driving around by myself. So thanks for asking these questions.
Oh man, this is the stuff I think about. And then I think, God, I wish I knew somebody that could answer some of these questions.
There you go. Yep.
So I know that you're a false water cobra nut, and you just kind of, told me about their range. And I was hoping you could tell me a little bit about their natural history and sort of the areas that they occupy that overlaps with Argentine boas.
Yeah, sure.
So that way I can learn more about Argentine boas and kind of where they come from, what the environment is like.
Sure. So Hydrodynastes gigas, the false water cobra, is it is one of the largest colubroid snakes in the Americas. There's the puffing snake. Oh my God, I just forgot. Spilotes sulphureus. It beats it in length. So that's a snake that can get to be like 11, 12, 13 feet. But falsies equal them in mass. So a big false water cobra gets to be 8.5 feet. There's discussion of a 9-footer in Europe, but I can't get that verified. But I definitely know they get to 8.5 feet because I have one that's 8.5 feet. So there you go. But these snakes I just love them to death because being a nerd, I like the natural history of a snake is what determines whether I want to keep it or not. And with falsies, they're associated with water, obviously with crayfish. I do a lot of my professional career is swamps, rivers, streams, marshes, wetlands, things like that. So I tend to be oriented towards those kind of animals. And with false water cobras, what's really cool is in South America, that is their requirement. There has to be water, but there's water in things like the Cerrado and the Chaco, which is this dry scrub forest. There's water in the Amazon. There's water in the Pantanal, which is this giant wetland in Brazil. There's water up along the northern coast in like Venezuela, places in Suriname, places like that where we have false water cobras. So they're an ecological generalist in that you can find them in Amazonia, you can find them in the Pantanal, you can find them in the Cerrado and the Chaco, but they're also a specialist because they're associated with water, like aquatic riparian environments there. And for me, that adds a layer of complexity to them that I really freaking nerd out with and love. So specific to Argentine boas, I am fairly certain that false water cobras occur in parts of Argentina where Occidentalis is. They're more associated with Amarylli, which we don't recognize anymore. Short-tailed boas. They're district like everywhere Amarylli is for the most part. There's false water cobra there. But I think I may be wrong. I don't know if I'm right. I feel like there's a part of Bolivia where you get Argentines and you can get falsies, but I'm like I said, might be wrong with that.
I know that they are in the Chaco area.
Yeah. So in the Chaco is this great. I have to go there before I die. Like,
I want to go next year. I'm planning on going next year.
well, hook me up because you might get a buddy. I'm serious.
Let's do it.
Because it's this weird scrub forest. It's almost like an Alice in Wonderland desert forest. It doesn't make sense. So you get cacti down in there. You get trees that are kind of like our live oaks and water oaks and shrub oaks out west. And during the wet season, it's green and lush and beautiful. And then during the dry season, it looks like hell on earth. And the temperature differentials in this place are insane. Like during when cold hits the southern part of the Chaco, they can easily have freezing nights. It's not going to be like 2015, but it's going to be the 30s. But then during the day, it's going to warm up into the 50s and the 60s and be sunny. And so that's what enables a lot of these tropical snakes, which are actually subtropical snakes, to make their way down into that southern part because of the fact that it's never like it's only cold for a little while, but for the majority of the year, it's basically kind of like Florida in March. That's their winter. And then Florida in like friggin' August, minus the rain, that would be their summer. So it's a really, really interesting place to go. And I also know from talking to a lot of people that a lot of the snakes that live in those environments, a lot of it has been turned into agricultural land. And so they've created canal systems and ditch agriculture to get water from the river into the inland environment, and certainly not, proponent of losing biodiversity, but they have actually created more false water cobra habitat than there was to begin with. And so,
Wow.
I know a guy that did his honeymoon in Bolivia, and I think it may have actually been an Argentine boa that he found. But he found like the same day, he either got an Amarilli or an Argentine and a falsie in like the same 20 minutes.
Wow.
I would have passed out. Like that is too much stimulus for Zac Loughman's brain. I would have fallen over and people would have thought I was like, I would not be able to handle it. Because I've been to Central America now 7 times and I still don't have a freaking boa. And I like that's like a sin against humanity in the universe as far as I'm concerned. So my first boa, I'm going to lose it because I'm a boa guy.
I got a guy and we'll talk after we're done recording.
Sure.
Because it seems like, I mean, so something that I'm really drawn to is the natural history and animals that are super hardy and can take a wide range of temperatures. And so I love diamond pythons, right? Because it blows my mind that they can be found in these breeding balls on black rocks on a beach. So you know that those rocks had to have been 100 degrees. At least, you know? And then you can also find them in areas where it's like 38 degrees, 36 degrees, you know, and or there's frost on the ground. And same thing with Argentines. The more I learn about their habitat, I'm like, man, that's really interesting. And then, you know, talking to somebody about Paraguay and the Gran Chaco and the Argentine boas and the false water cobras all being in the same place, I'm like, oh man, that sounds so cool.
Yeah, no, it is. There's a guy, I think he's doctor now, Josh Holbrook. He did his PhD in Paraguay, looking at snake and reptile and amphibian communities. He's the only guy I know that's doing anything in Paraguay. And I, of course, like found him and was like, so how much would it be to go on a trip? You know, all that kind of stuff. But he was like telling me what they find. And he was like, we either don't find any snakes or we're tripping over snakes.
Yeah.
And he couldn't figure out what was driving that was part of his PhD question. But he didn't normally see falsies. And then this last trip he did for his doc, he went to a new place. He was like, we found 3 by noon on one day.
Wow.
I was like, so, yeah, no. So yeah, I that is my number one bucket list. Is that I mean, the book I wrote was about all the animals that live down there. So
the giant river otters. I mean, the mammals down there are incredible.
Oh my God! Yeah.
Like
giant anteaters, giant armadillos, tamanduas. The maned wolf. You freaking take a deer in a canid and smash them together, and you get their canid down. I mean, it's just it's nuts. So
what a magical place.
Yep.
Yeah, I was actually asked if I could go this year in November or December, and I'm like, I have kids and a job. No, I cannot. But maybe next year. So I'm really hopeful that next year will be the year. Yeah, it seems like just such a diverse area with so many cool animals. So false water cobras can get down to really low temperatures.
Not really, really low temperatures, but they can handle a night or two in the 40s and upper 30s. I keep all my falsies in the garage because I just don't have space in this office. I have grow outs in here right now, but the big adults, they go out there. And last year we had 2 polar vortexes, which freaked me out because it got down to like -10. And I was like, son of a bitch. And so I have thermostats and everything in there. And we had, I had to leave to go to a conference in St. Louis in January. And then my wife called and was like, yeah, the electricity's out. And I was like, oh my God. Oh. And so I did end up losing 1 false water cobra in that. And the temperature, I had govies and everything. And the temperature in her cage got down to 30 and it stayed there for about 8 hours. All the there were 9 other falsies in there. They all made it through fine. They didn't make it down to 30 for that long. They made it to about 35 and stayed there. So I kind of know what the critical mass was, and it sucked. I'd raised those guys from babies. When I got back, I just sat in the garage. My son came down. He was like, "You okay, Dad?" I'm like, "I'm just having a moment." just Just let me
I'm
sit here
sorry.
for the next hour or two. And so then, and then all the colubrids I had are all North American. So they wrote it out just fine. So
Just chilling.
yeah.
Man. Yeah, I would love to get a false water cobra, but I don't think I could house it where I am right now.
Yeah.
What's a minimum? Well, let's say minimum ideal enclosure size for a false water cobra.
I like perfect world, a room. Like, and that's not an exaggerate. At school, when we developed the Zoosci major, we had a chemistry lab that I got to destroy, which was awesome because chemistry kicked my ass. So getting rid of the chem lab was one of the most cathartic things I've done in my life. But anyway, we built in there what would equate to probably like a walk-in closet. It was a 10-foot long. I'm trying to think of my dimensions here. 6 foot deep, and then 9 or 8 foot tall walk-in thing for our sloth. And we shared the sloth with the zoo. And so we were taking this poor sloth and driving it from the zoo to school. And it was like the sloth that was owned by divorced parents. Like you spend the weekend with the university, you spend the week with the zoo, because the zoo's only like 15 minutes away. And so I just made a decision like, this is stupid. We're not doing this anymore. Zoo, you have the bigger enclosure, you keep the sloth. And so we're left with this walk-in enclosure. And it was really funny because my staff was like, ooh, maybe we can get a tamandua, which is this little anteater thing. We could get parrots. And then I very rarely pull my director card. And I was like, nope, false water cobras are going in there. I'm like, but we already have too many. I was like, but now we can have more. Like, I was like, so anyway, that's where our breeder males live. And they use every inch of it. They go up all the time, by the way. They are up in those branches basking. So that in a perfect world, that's what I would say for those animals.
Wow.
In a realistic world, for an adult female that you didn't power feed to make it absolutely enormous. So a normal average adult female, which is going to be 6.5, 7 feet long and weigh about 8 to 9 pounds. Just picture a really big Woma or an average sized blackhead. That's exactly how big they get. An 8 foot enclosure, an 8 by 2 by 2. That's what I keep all of my adults in once they get to that size. And those are expensive. Those are not cheap. And then I found a guy who would build into it a shift. So I can basically turn it into 2 4 by 2 by 2s. And so what I'll do is, like, if I have 2 females hanging out, I'll put one on the other side, push the shift, and then feed them that way. When they get done eating, I just pull the shift. So, but that to me is like minimum. They will grow out of a 4 by 2 by 2 in 2 years flat. So,
dog.
Yeah. So that's the deal. With them, I also think biosecurity being as good as it could possibly be, that falsies are like a perfect snake to consider keeping outside.
Really?
Yes. And I don't know anybody that does, because I mean, a lot of them live in a climate that's identical to like South Carolina.
Okay.
And like that area of Bolivia where they live is, I did the whole thing we all do where you get on like Weather Spark and compare and contrast. Sure. And it was identical to Augusta, South Carolina.
Wow.
Climatically. So I think that they would be good. The only issue with keeping one outside in Florida is you are begging it to get pentastomes because I am positive, given their predatory response, every little anole they see, they're going to eat. Every Cuban tree frog they see, they're going to eat. They're probably going to try to eat a cane toad. Like all the things that carry the pentastomes, they're going to eat it. Like, because they literally eat everything.
That's my fear with my diamond pythons that I have outside.
Yeah.
That is definitely my fear, is the pentastomes. I just found out yesterday from Alexa Shamshoyan that pentastomes are crustaceans.
Yeah. They're freaking devil shrimp. They live in your lung. They're
Devil
horrible.
shrimp.
And I, as someone who studies crustaceans, I've seen them. I got last year we did a Florida trip for this biology snake class, and I got to hang out with Dr. Terry Farrell. He's awesome. And he's the guy that kind of really started all the penistone stuff. And then other people have now subsequently taken what Terry started and ran with it. But that was the most eye-opening thing as a both herpetologist and herpetoculturalist I've ever done.
Yeah.
Is that we went out, we caught rando brown anoles. Like, these were not cultured, these were brown anoles, and then we humanely euthanized them, and they were loaded with the larvae. And that was all the way up in the land. That was not in the southern part.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I thought, there might be one anole, like 1 out of 5 anoles. Like, no. We euthanized 3 anoles. All of them it's completely changed my perspective on using anoles as feeders. And all that good stuff. So
Can you kind of tell me like how I can avoid giving pentastomes to my diamond pythons?
Yeah. I think that the diamonds, it just depends on their propensity to eat the intermediate hosts. Like,
yeah. So is that how you catch pentastomes, is through consuming something that carries them?
So you can't get pentastomes from the environment.
Okay, cool.
Okay. So like if a black racer loaded with pentastomes gets eaten by your diamond, which I don't know why that would ever happen, but let's just say for the sake of argument it does. The diamond's actually going to digest those pentastomes that are in the black racer. Okay. For the diamond to get the pentastomes, it has to start eating Cuban tree frogs and brown anoles, because the life cycle, as I understand it, and I am not a pentastone person, and there are plenty of badass pentastone people out there, but basically snake with pentastomes defecates out eggs. And then that poo pile gets eaten by a bug. And then along comes the lizard or the frog that eats the bug. And then that then has to be eaten by the snake to get the pentastomes. So in the case of a diamond, I don't really think they would be at high risk, because they're not eating frogs and they're not eating lizards, to my knowledge. Now, a juvenile diamond, sure. You know, that's a whole different ballgame. But an adult diamond that's made that onogenic shift to birds and rodents, it's probably fine. Whereas you throw one of my guys out there and it's going to literally eat brown anoles like Tic Tacs. Like, it's there. And so I would imagine that your false water would get infested with pentastomes pretty damn quickly. So essentially,
basically, I want to have the finest mesh possible.
Yep.
That would still be strong and secure, and something that would keep the anoles and the frogs out, essentially. Yep. I could see my diamonds going for a large frog. I could see them doing that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I would definitely, but as long as I have, I plan on using 1/4 inch hardware mesh. So that should be,
you should be fine.
Yeah. Plenty small enough to keep.
But anything that eats those, and as you know, if you've spent any time in Florida, brown anoles are ubiquitous. They're friggin' everywhere. Like,
I've been here 35 years. They're everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. So like,
I have agamas everywhere too.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But no, as long as it doesn't eat those, you're pretty much okay, from my understanding.
Okay. Right on. All right. Now, you brought up crypto before.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to get a better understanding of crypto. Is that primarily a colubrid disease? Is it just as deadly and prevalent in pythons and boas? Can they catch it from a colubrid? Like, how does that work?
So you can definitely have boids with crypto. It just anecdotally, it seems like it's a little bit more rampant in colubrids than it is in boas and pythons in a collection setting. And I think there's a reason, and that's just simply crypto is passed through feces. So, my false water cobras, they defecate once or twice a week. My blood python defecates, actually produces crap.
Yeah.
I have adults like once a month, maybe. And so the simple fact that just the frequency of the spores leaving the snake through defecation is much less in pythons and boas, which is then going to lower the probability of it being passed. But with colubrid collections, we're the biology of the snakes we keep sets us up perfectly to have it. I mean, I've made a recent switch from having a mostly king snake population to collection to now I've got a lot of Pitchophis, bull snakes, pine snakes, gopher snakes, things like that. And those damn things are growing. They're all young of the year 2025s. A lot of them. They eat a rat pink and it is crap within 48 hours. I mean, it is insane. Like my office, I started to stagger feed them because I was feeding. There's about 30 of them up at school, and I was feeding all 30 on Monday. And then I walk in on Wednesday. I'm like, what the hell is that smell? Because baby snake crap smells different than adult snake crap. And it took me a little while to figure out, oh, they're doing like sequential shitting. Like, what the hell is this? So now I feed a certain group. Like I feed 6 a day because there's 30. And that way I'm not getting overwhelmed with that smell.
Wow.
But anyway, but I was thinking about it though. When I went to that, I now have snakes defecating every single day. It is like if I had crypto positive animals, I found the recipe to make crypto rampage through my collection. So it makes you think. But anyway, back to what it is. It's a protozoan. I don't remember which type off the top of my head, but the thing that makes crypto so insidious is a lot of pathogens. You actually have to get a large load of them to get sick. So like, I don't know that much about serpentivirus, but I imagine you need more than one phage to get into the snake to get sick. With crypto, you can infect a snake with like 3 spores. And every time they defecate up to 10 grams, it is hundreds of thousands to millions of spores. And those spores can get on the feet of phorid flies. And now you've got a vector. And so now that just kind of goes everywhere. And so that's why stress management is so important. Because if you keep the stress load in your animals low, you're keeping their immune response high, and that's the only way they're going to keep themselves from getting this condition. So,
jeez.
But no, it's rough. And when the animals when they're symptomatic, they start regurgitating. Their poo smells horrendous. I've now gotten to the point, and I don't want to give the impression like my collections are infested with crypto. I just realized I had crypto and started being hyper diligent with it. But I will die on this hill. The feces actually smells different because the gut biota has shifted. And since the gut biota shifted, the literal things that make the poop smell shift. So,
wow.
So you get that. You can also get liquid diarrhea. When we first got it at the university, all the way back in 2018, that's the worst I've ever had it. Since then, it's just been a pop up here, pop up there. But we had this 8.5-foot blacktail crebo that was like perfect. He was the embodiment of what a blacktail crebo should be. And I've never seen a snake have liquefied diarrhea before. And when this thing went to the bathroom, it was literally a fire hose. Like, just, it looked like gravy coming out of his.
Oh.
Yeah. And then when I realized, like, there's 10 million cryptospores just floating around in there, it can make you feel very hopeless as a keeper. I know that crypto has caused more than one herpetoculturalist to just kind of give up because it can wipe your collection out very quickly.
So you have crypto in your collection?
Well, okay. So right now, I don't know of any snakes that have crypto.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure with the colubrid collection, if you have snakes from like more than 20 sources and you have more than 100 snakes, I just don't know probability wise how you don't have at least one animal in your collection with crypto.
Yeah. So
But
what do
right
you do
now,
if
I
all of a
don't, based
sudden?
off all the testing I've done, there's no animals that I know of that have crypto.
Okay. So what do you do if all of a sudden an animal becomes symptomatic? Do you
So the
euthanize that
second that I
animal?
have an animal that's symptomatic, it is isolated. It is
Okay.
immediately isolated. But the problem is if you pull it out of the enclosure that it knows, and now you throw it in a quarantine situation, that's stressful, which is
Mm,
then going to cause potentially a stronger crypto response. So,
wow.
um, so what I do is I have in the house, I have my upstairs. There's no snakes in the upstairs. The only snakes that go to the upstairs are snakes that I think have crypto. So I've done
Mm,
that. The other thing I've done is at school, we actually have a crypto ward. So at school, we have a couple snakes that we do know are crypto positive. So I guess if you're counting the university collection, we do know we have crypto positive snakes. But those snakes are kept in isolation. There's 2 students. Those are the only animals they work with. They don't work with any other animals. And a lot of zoos do this too. And those animals, by the way, that are asymptomatic right now, they're fine. Like
mm,
they're defecating normally. Everything's fine, which is one of the scary things about this is you can totally have an animal that has crypto in your collection, not even know it. But if you're keeping them well, you're not going to know it because they're not expressing disease. See?
mm.
So anyway, but I take them upstairs. And then what I started to do is like if they're in a rack tub, the animal above and below also goes to a different room in a state of quarantine for about a month just to see. And then the poop, feces from those animals is sent away to get tested.
Wow.
And that is and if you get a negative, you can't trust that. The general consensus is 3 tests. 3 negatives equals negative.
Wow.
So it's a very pricey endeavor, but
Jesus.
it is worth it for the peace of mind. And then when I have a snake that comes back as crypto positive, I'm fortunate if it's a rare, if it's an animal that is, and I hate saying this way, but like if it's something that's rare, it will probably go live in the crypto ward. If it's something that is relatively healthy, I'll put it in the crypto ward. If it's obviously sick and it's not doing well, then it gets euthanized.
Yeah.
But I've
Okay.
learned through experience and now I would argue a tiny bit of wisdom um, that you just have to have a response to it and accept it's present. I
Yeah.
have talked to a lot of people because I've somehow gotten this de facto reputation as being the guy you talk. I am like everybody in Clubrid Land's crypto therapist. That is like my job. I'm not joking. I've probably talked to 50 people.
I know. It's come up in my Discord and they're like, I'm going to talk to Dr. Zac Loughman.
There you go. You know, and my message to everybody is like, don't freak out, but start accepting you may have a problem. And then you just have to have a measured response to it and everything will be okay.
Wow.
But you just don't want to, if you ignore it, then you might have a problem.
Yeah.
so yeah.
Can that jump to people?
No is the answer to that. But I think that you can probably get the spores in you. You just don't respond to it. Cryptosporidium as a genus of things is massively understudied. There's probably hundreds of species of crypto. And in herpetoculture, we know there's Cryptosporidium serpentis, there's Cryptosporidium varinae. Okay. Serpentis impacts the stomach of a squamate reptile. So you can get it in a leopard gecko, by the way. Varinae, we think varanid monitor lizard. You can totally get varinae in a snake too. In the hognose snake world, Cryptosporidium is a big deal because hognose don't handle crypto very well. And what's been found with those snakes is that they'll get serpentis, but they actually have a tiny bit better response to serpentis than they do varinae. Varinae wipes them out quickly. So, but the joke's on everybody because there's plenty of species of Cryptosporidium that we don't know because nobody has funding to describe them. And it could very well be that the Cryptosporidium that's wiping out our animals is this undescribed species that we don't know exists. When you study crypto, you learn that the way that they're described to scientists is you just put Cryptosporidium and then you put the host. So there's like Cryptosporidium toad, Cryptosporidium chipmunk, Cryptosporidium robin, and when we did the testing that you do at the university all the way back in 2018 to figure out what crypto we had, because we have the tools to do that. And I was working with one of our molecular biologists, and I said, like, did you get your results back? I went down to her office. She's like, yeah. I was like, all right, well, do we have Serpentis? And she's like, yep. Okay. And we also have Verinae. And I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. And then she goes, and we also have Cryptosporidium spa 1, 2, 7, 12, and 14. And I was like, Jesus Christ, like what? And so there was just like in our snakes, there were all of those crypto. They don't have names yet. And then there was Cryptosporidium muris, which is the mouse species. So fun fact, almost every major mouse breeding facility has mouse crypto in their colonies. Okay. And it's called Cryptosporidium muris. In mammals, crypto's not horrible unless you become immunocompromised. So like I am now 100% certain I have had crypto from mice when I was in grad school. And you just get a little sick. You get, diarrhea for a little while. Your body beats it. You're good. The reason why it's so bad for reptiles is that they don't have a fever response. And so unless the reptile can get real hot for a long period of time, which kills a reptile, by the way, they're not going to be able to get rid of this. And that's why it's a bit of a death sentence in a reptile versus a mammal. But when I got that result, that was the moment that Zac Loughman was like, we don't know shit about shit. Like, we think it's Serpentis. It could be Cryptosporidium species 14 that's killing our snakes, or there could be a whole complex of these things where if you have Serpentis, the snake's like sick but not going to die. But then Cryptosporidium serpentis plus Cryptosporidium 14 overwhelms its immune system, kills it. So we're just now kind of getting some base data on this. And there's a couple, I should not have the reputation of being the crypto person. There's several veterinarians that are taking this pretty seriously. And their studies are showing that this is a very complex disorder and that drug treatment doesn't seem to work. What drugs do is they knock the crypto back and they basically put it into an asymptomatic state. But it's still, as an organism, living in the mucosa of the intestine or the stomach, the lining, just waiting for that snake to get immunocompromised or stressed. And then it flares and goes into its reproductive state and starts asexually reproducing these spores like crazy. So yeah, no. But
that's wild. Yeah.
It's the only thing where it literally, to deal with it, you almost have to change your philosophy of keeping. Because I was desperately trying to get ahead of it and get it out. And it was driving me insane. This is at the university, not here at my house. I was literally, there's that meme of Charlie with he's smoking.
Oh, yeah.
All those. That was me trying to figure this thing out. And I just kind of reached this point where I was talking to our vet and I was like, so is this something I just need to accept? It's there. And maybe instead of trying to eliminate it, figure out a way to cope with it. And Dusty, our vet, was like, yeah, I'm glad you finally came to that conclusion. It was funny because he was like, you're not going to outsmart this thing. It's there. Just get to a point where you have a plan and you stick to your plan and it is what it is. And that was it. Because until we get a cure, we're not going to get rid of it. It's almost like I've seen the people, the Python community seems to have kind of done this with serpentivirus or Nido to a certain extent. This is where the Nido positive animals are. This is where the Nido negative animals are. And you just kind of have to almost treat them like those populations because they can live with Nido. And their quality of life can probably be okay to even good with Nido. It's just do you take that Boland's python that has Nido and just euthanize it? Or do you figure out a way to maintain a colony of them? And I know that alone is that's fodder for fires.
Yeah.
But
Well,
you
yeah,
know,
it's just like people, right? I mean, we have E. coli living in our guts, right? It only becomes a problem when it gets out of whack and it proliferates too much,
yep.
right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, that's like I found out certain people are carriers for strep. Like they
Yeah.
have strep in their bodies and they're just walking around shedding it,
Mm-hmm.
but they have no symptoms. And I figured that out because my wife is one of those people, or she was. I think she tests negative now. But I had to have my tonsils cut out as an adult because she was just walking around with this bacteria in her.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah,
crazy.
no. The biological world is nowhere near as clean and sterile as animal keepers think it is.
Yeah.
And I think that when you kind of view things through more of an ecological framework, an evolutionary framework, whether you want to or not, it makes coming to an understanding of how to deal with these things a little bit easier, in my opinion, than if you think you're going to actually outsmart these organisms that have evolved to do something over tens of millions of years. Like, you're just not going to do it.
Yeah.
So,
Well, kind of changing gears here because you know you've talked about the hognose and the false water cobras. What are you? Do you have a draw to rear fang venomous animals and what can you kind of talk to me about their venom? Like what is like do they have like actual venom glands
sure.
or is it a saliva or are those the same thing? Like how does that work?
So, I don't know why I have so many rear fang things. There was a day like a year or two ago, I was driving to work, and that's like my precious me time. I get like 40 minutes a day, 20 minutes to work, 20 minutes back. And I was just kind of thinking about, I was in the middle of a revision of my collection and was like, what direction am I going to go? And then I realized like there's a freaking rear fang bucket in my collection. And when did that happen? And why is it there? Like, because I don't look at them and I'm like, oh, venom it. Like, that's not it. It's just, I think I like this. The ecological situation those snakes find themselves in is what I like. And it just so happens that they're rear fanged for me. I think that's more what it is.
Yeah.
But with truly rear fang snakes, there's one camp that says they're not venomous because they don't have a true venom delivery system. So when snakes deliver venom to prey, the front fang snakes, the elapids, the viperids, and then some others, they have a venom system that's basically pressurized. It's under the way the anatomy is, it's pressured so that that's how spitting cobra can open its mouth and hurl venom, meters. It's because it's pressurized. You release the pressure and it goes. With the rear fanged animals, it's not pressurized. It's more of a mechanical delivery system. So you put pressure against the Duvernoy's gland. That's the name of the gland in most of these animals. And then that venom gland gets kind of pushed between some muscles, some bone, and then that's what squirts the venom out. And so that's led some people to say venomous snakes have a pressurized venom system. Non-venomous venomous snakes have a non-pressurized system. But me just being Zac, not Dr. Loughman, I can't say non-venomous venomous snakes. It sounds stupid. Like, like I just don't understand that logic. I never have. So to me, they're all venomous. But to be venom, you have to have peptides. You have to have biological compounds in there that are going to act on on your prey or your predator. Their nervous system, muscular system, cellular systems. And so, with that being said, to me, if you got a Duvernoy's gland and it's producing peptides, you're a venomous snake. And hognose snakes have that. Falsies have that. Boiga definitely have that. Barons racers have that. All these snakes have it. There's like garter snakes have it out west.
Really?
And so all that this is, though, is it's a mechanism for a lot of rear fang snakes. It's more about predigestion than anything. You bite your prey, you inoculate it with some peptides, you start the digestive process, you swallow it, it's already digesting. Vipers do the same thing, but with those animals, it's being used to actually like take out the prey. So like false water cobras, for example, when you feed them, they wrap their prey up just like a python or a rat snake, because with them, the Duvernoy secretions aren't really offensive and they're not really used for dispatching prey. There's some hemolytic protein digestion going on because they have in their secretions metalloproteases, which are these crazy proteins that you see in like rattlesnake venom. But they're so bad at delivering the venom that it's really not doing that much. It can cause a response in a human if they get enough into you and it's an efficient bite, but most of the time the bites aren't efficient, so you don't get a response. So that's the deal with them. It isn't saliva. It comes from a gland outside of the salivary gland. It's the Duvernoy's gland is what it is in rear fang snakes. And the anatomy of a Duvernoy's gland it's crazy. Some species, it's just a gland. You know, it's not really that developed, evolved, whatever. In Barron's racers, when you dissect it out of a Barron eye, I have no problem even saying that is a venom gland. Like it's got the little pockets in it. We call them lumens, different chambers. There's some evidence that they might be producing peptide A in one chamber, peptide B in another. And when they get released, they mix together to make it more efficient. So there's a lot going on there. I learned way more than I thought writing the book. And that's when I realized like these things are venomous. And I know that people look at a hognose and they're like, it's just a hognose. It's a hoggy. Well, it's a venomous snake. Like that's just, it doesn't mean that it's like the most venomous snake, but it's got peptides in it. It has a Duvernoy's gland. And in their instance, I've actually seen it kill things. I've watched Western hogs out in Iowa where our field site is. They'll bite a race runner and they'll just keep chewing on it. And after about 45 seconds to 50 seconds, the race runner's dead. Like that.
Wow.
And that is a venomous, venom response to prey. Just, we're not a race runner. So, in most of us, it doesn't cause a response, but I challenge everyone to go online and look at hognose snake bites. To people, they're gnarly. They're not cool. So
one of my coworkers got gnawed on by his. They have one pet snake. It's a hognose, and I said, "Have you guys ever had anything happen?" I think it was him. It was either him or his daughter. One of them got bit, and their arm swelled up pretty good. No,
so they're something to be reckoned with. They're just so derpy looking that people assume that the cuteness means they're not dangerous.
Yeah. Well, I mean, shoot, a lot of venomous snakes are kind of cute,
Mm-hmm.
Have you gotten any bites from any false water cobras or hognose and gotten a reaction?
I've not had a bad reaction to a false water cobra bite. I've had a reaction. And for me, the little guys, it's the neonates that are way more chemically significant than the big animals. Now, I've only been bitten twice by the big animals that it was like, I got it off my hand and then was like, shit. I just sat in my the garage downstairs and waited for whatever's going to happen, and fortunately nothing happened. But then, man, sexing the neonates is a nightmare because the little guys are the ones that are super bitey. The big ones normally are not bitey, but the babies, and I think it's just because evolutionarily, if you live in those predator saturated places they live in and you're passive, you die. So, it's better to be aggressive. But I have definitely been bit. I got one bit me on my left hand and I couldn't get it off. And that one, I had like the pins and needles, electricity feeling for about 3 hours. And then I got tagged by another one and I had a little bit of swelling in my hand and that same pins and needles thing. I'm a little worried that I'm becoming hypersensitive because I'm around them all the time. So, I try to wear gloves when I'm dealing with the little guys. The problem is I lose all my dexterity with gloves. So I haven't been able to find a pair of gloves where I can actually do what I need to do with the snake. So.
Okay. Now, what about, what is it? The beak snakes.
Oh.
Now, so I've heard that they will coat themselves, or like, do they have any venom? Because I've heard that they'll coat themselves in their saliva.
Okay. They're not actually coating themselves in their saliva. They have something called a loreal gland, which is a gland in their eye.
Okay.
And it produces a lipid-like thing, a fat.
Okay.
And so they will take that gland and wipe it all over the secretions from that gland. They wipe it all over their body. And they do that to basically cover themselves in a layer of fat, and water doesn't go through fat.
So they're waterproof.
Water and fat are hydrophobic. And and I'm oversimplifying this a lot. So for the super snake nerds, I know it's not just fat. So there you go. But that whole group, the Samnophids, the sands, they're sand snakes and things like that live in Africa, the Middle East, and Southern Europe. They're all known for doing things like that. Beak snakes are actually, I've got a fun beak snake story. I actually self-envenomated myself with a freaking beak snake.
Did you really?
Yeah, it was stupid. So I went to our local reptile show, and I had my son with me. This was 5 years ago now. It was pre-pandemic. I know that. So it was actually longer, probably 2018, 2017. And my local show, I'm happy to say, has gotten exponentially better than it used to be. But back then, it was just tables of fudge, plastic swords, like everything you hate about a reptile show. But I had to go because my rat guy would go there, and he was cheaper than anyone online. So I would go up, and then, of course, if you're in the show, you're going to walk around the table. Well, I was walking around the tables, and this table had 2 brand new hatched beak snakes. And I have this habit of thinking I'm thinking something, and I'm actually saying it out loud. It's, I don't know why I do this, but I apparently said, according to my son, what the F, those are just going to die. In a very aggressive way. And the guy kind of looked up at me like, and I'm looming over him because he was sitting down. And I don't know why, but the next thing that came out of my mouth was like, can you just give those to me? And he was like, what? I was like, they're going to die. Just give them to me. Like, I was just pissed at the whole situation. And so I literally bullied this guy into giving me these 2 beak snakes. He had them at like $200 a piece because they were captive hatched. And my son's like, that was the coolest thing I've ever seen, Dad. I was like, don't do that, Colin. But anyway.
You shamed him into giving you snakes. I shamed
him into giving me the snakes. So now I've got beak snakes, and I'm like, I don't want beak snakes. Like, what am I going to do with these things? So we get them back to school, and I'm trying to get them to eat. And I had read online that they're really good at assist feeding. So you basically do this kind of classic thing. It's used with colubrids all the time, where you take the pinky and you kind of like beat them in the face a little bit. Opposite, negative stress. There you go. And then when they gape, you just kind of put the pinky in and then you freeze. And so I did that for the first one, and because they were starting to look a little bit rough. And the first one, like, immediately grabbed it, ate the pinky, and I was like, sweet. And so then the second one, it wouldn't open up its mouth. And so I did this trick with a credit card where you like open up their mouth. I put the mouse in there, and I took my pinky and was like gently shoving the mouse into the back of its throat. And I got it to where it wanted to be. And beak snake babies have kind of big heads for their body size. And then when I was pulling my pinky back out, I got it stuck on the damn fang. And I was like, shit, what do I do now? Because I'm like connected to the snake. And then that is the one rear fang. It's not a bite. I don't know what it is. Self-inflicted wound. That hurt immediately. Like, that was
really?
boom, immediate electricity. Like it felt like I was being zapped with a little live wire. And so then I got my finger off of it, put the snake down. The snake ate the pinky head, which was cool. And then my finger was buzzing. I mean, that's the best way to describe it. And so I like, being the nerd that I am, I was like, ooh, are my acetylcholine channels? Blah, 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 blah. And then I was like, yeah, you might want to do something. Like, put the nerd away. Let's go. And so I ran down to the bathroom, put my finger under hot water because that was the only thing I could think to do. And then everything went away. But that was the only time with any snake where I got hit by something with a rear fang and like immediately felt a sensation that was not normal.
Did those snakes go on to live?
Yeah, they both made it to adulthood. One of my coworkers at the school, she loves, her name's Kinsey Guthrie. She loves taking on the things that are going to die and saving them. And so I may have completely taken advantage of that with her. Like these things are going to die, but you can save them, Kinsey. And she did. And she actually, I gave, one of them I gave to her. And then another one I gave to somebody who was working with that particular beak snake species. And was like, here, take them, you know. But yeah,
wow.
That whole situation was just ridiculous. Like the way I got the snakes, the way I envenomated myself with the snake.
So they have like an oil, like a lipid duct in their eyes, and
it's just anterior to their eye.
Okay.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yep.
So I have a friend, Shira, who has one, and she reported some irritation on her skin after handling it.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering, you know, or we were all like speculating, like, could it be from that, you know, coating or something, you know?
It could have been from that. It could have been just the saliva and the contact with the substrate. You know, she might have been irritated to it, but no. Yeah. That the beak snake, though, only thing that's really caused a strong immediate reaction.
Wow. Interesting. What I kind of want to talk a little bit about evolution and mimicry that you see in you know, of dangerous venomous snakes. You know, because I talked to Lucas Lee about this, and you know, we were talking about like false water cobras. They're not like hanging out around cobras. So is it just nature selects for certain things that are more likely to scare away a predator? You know, like black milk snakes start out being tricolor, which I'm assuming predators are less likely to feed on something that's tricolored. Like how does that work?
So the way that, so the false water cobra thing, a lot of snakes across the snake tree of life have a defensive response where they flare out their neck and create a hood. And the general idea there is just simply, if you're dealing with a visual predator, that predator sees you, you don't see the predator, so it sizes you up and basically makes a decision. Yep, I can take that. And then as it's, you know, you now are aware of the predator, you suddenly double in size or triple in size or width or whatever, and now become, you know, this hissing, raised up snake that's probably going to, at least some of the time, make a predator go, all right, made a mistake. And then in that instance, that response then can become, you know, bred into the next generation potentially. Once again, gross oversimplification.
Sure.
My favorite thing with the tricolor snakes is that there's a lot of people that are looking at tricolor snakes that are not herpetologists. They're ethologists. They're behavioral biologists that like to study animal behavior. And I think I read this in Harry Green's book, the big coffee table book, which I recommend everybody get. I think it's called Snakes, Evolution and Mystery of Nature, or something to that effect.
Oh, let me write that down.
We make this assumption because we see in color. The thing that we need to remember is that a lot of these snake predators do not see in color.
Oh.
So like when we see a tricolor snake, that is definitely something that we can recognize. It's called aposematic coloration. But if you are a colorblind animal that doesn't see in color, you just see a bunch of contrast. And there's this idea that maybe tricolor snakes initially evolved not as this way of advertising, here I am, but rather it's a wonderful way to be nocturnally camouflaged.
Oh
So,
my God.
yeah. So like reds absorb light. Okay. And if you are a red colored snake and you're nocturnal, when you're out on a moonlit night and the moonlight hits your back, it's not reflecting back off into the jungle or whatever. And so you're moving in amongst all the leaf litter on the forest floor. And this tricolored high contrast scheme that you have is going to help with nocturnal camouflage against a colorblind predator. And then what ends up happening is that might be where it initially evolves. Then the next thing you know, okay, this is advantageous. We're going to run with that. And then a nice little byproduct of it is these animals that can see color are now seeing you, and you now have a way to back up your danger with a venomous bite. And so it's kind of the egg chicken relationship instead of just straight going into the tricolor condition.
Oh man.
And that can explain why something like a black milk snake starts off as a tricolored animal. I'm in the forest
camouflage.
I'm active at night. I'm in the leaf litter. And then you become this big bodied black adult. They live at higher elevations. Now you got to switch your preference. Black is going to naturally be a camouflage state. But now you're black because you need to be black to like thermoregulate. And so there's more to it than just they mimic things. Like and that when you really learn about how evolution works, that's the way it works. We oftentimes way oversimplify it and we imply that there's a direction to it. And then the craziest thing about evolution is it's non-directional. It just kind of happens, which is one of the hardest things to understand. Like to kind of kick it over to my crayfish world just once. Here in West Virginia, we have blue crayfish.
Yeah.
They're wonderful creatures. They're literally in my backyard. They're everywhere around here. And one of the guys that I work with, Zac Loughman, Dr. Loughman, he was my postdoc, and I brought him on for the crayfish lab. And he's an animal behavior guy. And he told me right on day one, I want to figure out why crayfish are blue. And so I was like, all right, go for it. As long as you do this thing that I need you to do, I'll support that. And he did. And so we hired him on as a professor. And my absolute favorite thing is he spent 6 years trying to answer this question. And he has gone down rabbit holes you don't even want to know about. He's like learned about how snake eyes work, dog eyes work, bird eyes work, trying to perceive how this blue is being perceived by the predators. He's gone to Penn State and buddied up with a physicist that can blast something with a laser beam and then it refracts off and he can say like what the true color is. Because our eyes see one thing, but that may not actually be what color it is.
Yeah.
And so after doing this for like 6 years, going down this mythical, literally like this Gandalf, Frodo quest to get to the answer, he's come to the conclusion, it just doesn't matter. Like,
oh my God.
Like his response is like, yeah, there's really no evolutionary significance. They just had some genes get turned off. They're blue. It's evolutionarily neutral. That's what we call it. It's not advantageous. Wow. It's not deleterious. And so since it's not hurting them, there's no reason to get rid of it. Since it's not helping them, we don't need to evolve in a new direction per se. And I think a lot of evolution is that. It's just neutral. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and so with this, with tricolored snakes, it just kind of happened. Now, what's really neat about the tricolor snakes is some non-venomous mimicked tricolors, they don't match the pattern of a coral where they live. Others match it to a T. Like my absolute favorite example, and we can own them, are tricolor hognose snakes. Seen it on pulchra. They look exactly like an Argentine coral snake. The width of the white, the width of the black, the width of the red it's like identical to the Argentine coral snake. But what's really cool about them is they've got the paint job, but they have gone one step further with, we call it a mimetic system. With their mimetic system, they also evolved the behavior. So I don't know if you've messed around with a coral yet, but
I have not.
They are the most neurotic little bastards on earth. They sit perfectly still. And then when you touch them and they just kind of go, they just do this. They take the front end of their body and their tail at the same time and they strike. And it's very fast. And when you're messing with a tricolor hog, if you haven't messed with corals, you just assume that they're neurotic. If you've messed with coral snakes, you immediately recognize what they are doing is what coral snakes do. So in that situation, that's not nocturnal camouflage. Like, I would argue that is a true, they're mimicking a snake that is perceived as dangerous in their habitat. Because why would you evolve the behavior if you don't need that to complete the system? Whereas there's other tricolor hog or tricolor snakes like scarlet snakes. I don't necessarily know if a scarlet snake is mimicking a coral because they're nocturnal AF, and that tricolor condition, it just might be a form of nocturnal camouflage for them that just happens to occasionally make a bird that sees in color not eat them because they think they're going to get bit by a coral.
Wow.
So no.
So yeah, because it's, you hear about like mimicry and it's like, is it really mimicking it? Because like, how does that work? The animals don't go, what we should really do is have tricolor babies so they can hide, or so that way they scare off predators. Now, the fact that could potentially be camouflage, I think is the coolest thing in the world. And it makes so much more sense that a coral snake would actually just not want to be seen.
Yeah.
And then maybe over time, would other animals in the area maybe start to understand that you don't mess with this because, whatever, you have relatives that messed with it and then died? Is that
the really interesting thing about building a mimetic system and having venom for defense is that if your venom is overly effective, you're never going to teach the predator, don't mess with me. Because if everyone that bites you dies, there's not going to be any learning or response in the predator. You need to actually really F the predator up and have it live so it can go back and be like, yo, don't mess with that. Leave that the hell alone. If you just wipe them out, you don't get that response. And if you don't get that response, you can't build. There's no reason to have aposematic coloration.
Wow.
So that's the thing to me that this whole part of nature is one of my favorite things to think about, because if you really want it to work well and to get that recognition, leave it alone. The thing has to live. And then the thing you are hurting, it works out even better if it has some kind of a altruistic social system where it can then go back and warn other members of its species, don't mess with that. Because if you think about it, like when you were growing up, the first time you saw a bee, you probably, like a bumblebee, a big black and that's a furry, fuzzy thing that's kind of cute. Your instinct when you're 2 or 3 is like, oh, touch it. Your mom or your dad rolls in or whoever and is like, whoa, what the hell are you doing? And that big response, that's what teaches you, don't touch the bee. Like my kid being raised by the weirdo that is me, I would be like, all right, leave this guy alone, but super cool. You can do this, that, and that, and then that, And so he would get in trouble all the time in day camps and things, like walking up to bumblebees, not touching them. And so he would come home and be like, all right, what's the message here, Dad? Because you said we can like respect them, but Steve, the camp counselor, is like literally putting me in timeout because I'm getting near to this thing that's going to hurt me. Like, you see? So like the level of response and what you're taught initially is what teaches you to leave those animals alone.
And you think animals do that too?
I think that certain animals do that for sure. Birds, like blue jays, are way more social than people realize. I wish that we could hear what blue jays say in English, because they would be they're little thugs.
Yeah.
Splitting up your neighborhood. But at the same time, when birds mob a snake, they are mobbing a snake because in their species evolution earlier on, several members of that species watched their species get eaten by snakes, and they learned that's dangerous. Leave it alone, kind of thing. Or we need to tell everybody this is here so we don't die, So that those behavioral responses and the evolution of them is something that's really freaking cool. But no, with the venomous snakes, the non-tricolor mimetic systems are the ones that I think are super cool. There's a species of, it's in the genus Xenodon, which are the giant South American hognose snakes. I'm not going to give the species name because I always screw it up. And then I get a message telling me the right name. But we're not doing that today. But there's a venomous pit viper called Bothrops bilineatus. It's the only Bothrops lancehead viper that is bright green and semi-arboreal. And this Xenodon is bright green and semi-arboreal. And it's the only Xenodon that can kind of go up. And so like that to me, those are way cooler when you get those systems than just kind of the classic tricolor thing.
Yeah.
And how that evolved, I have no idea. But it's cool.
Well, and that's like tail rattling too, right?
Yeah.
Like the snakes aren't doing it because they're like, oh, I saw a rattlesnake do this once, so I should try it out. Like that's not what's happening. It's
the ancestral condition is actually rattle your tail. And we know that because there's a lot of snakes that do it. There's snakes that do that in places where there aren't rattlesnakes. So we absolutely know that evolved first and then was brought into the rattlesnakes.
Wow. Oh, so tons of snakes did that first, and then rattlesnakes ended up evolving to have a rattle?
Yeah, they took it even further.
Wow. They just ran with it.
Yeah, and we know that that was something that was present in ancestral pit vipers because there's lots of pit vipers. Cottonmouths and copperheads, which are the closest relatives to Crotalus and Cisterus, the two rattlesnake genera, they rattle their tails all the damn time. And so there's your evidence. In fact, one of them, I don't remember which one, I believe, I'm not gonna say, but one of the Adchistrodon, at the tip of their tail, they actually have this elongate cornified scale. And one idea for that is that when they rattle it in the brush, it just makes a louder noise.
Wow.
And some people go so far as to think like maybe the ancestral rattlesnake had something like that. And then, you know, all that a rattle is it's the last scale that's stuck behind in a shed. So it's not that hard to see how that could evolve if you have a group of snakes that just have slightly larger tail scales like that, and then every time they shed, something gets stuck. Doesn't hurt them, makes the rattle louder. And next thing you know, many generations later, you got a rattlesnake. So
you're a smart guy. What I want to have a good argument for people to not kill rattlesnakes because everybody wants to kill rattlesnakes. If I find a rattlesnake on my property, I'm going to kill it because it's too dangerous. Yeah. It's better off being dead. What is the best argument to just say, no, they're better to have around. We should have them. Even if you kill one, there's still going to be more out there that you haven't killed. Right. So you're probably not actually making a lasting impact. So is there a way to educate people to be more safe and live harmoniously with them?
So I live in West Virginia. Need I say more?
Yeah. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I love West Virginia.
I'm in Florida, so.
Yeah. We got similar problems, different flavors. What I have found doing snake talks and being an environmental educator my entire adult life is the only thing that has really worked as far as getting like the hardcore person that's going to kill a rattlesnake to maybe change their ways is this kind of utilitarian argument that if you've got, and this just goes for all snakes, if you have, in your case, yellow rats, in my case, black rat snakes, milk snakes, king snakes, rattlesnakes, copperheads, they're all around your property. They're there for a reason, and it's not you. They don't like you. They're not coming to kill you. They weren't agents of Satan. They're literally there because something is there that they want, and that something that they want is twofold. They have habitat at your house, and the dinner bell is ringing because you've got a rodent problem. And what I have been able to do with a couple people is I don't think I changed their mind on the snakes. And this is, as an educator, this is not the best strategy, but I don't want the snakes to die. And that's what my goal is. I then start educating them about what those damn rodents are going to do to them, because what they don't realize is the rodents are what are going to make you sick, not the snakes. And if you get rid of the rodents, you'll get rid of the snakes. Now, if you have a hibernacula and the snakes are coming to your house because the basement has a crack in it and they can get in there for the winter, that's not a rodent problem. But 9 times out of 10, that's it. So it's not necessarily an argument to keep them from killing the snakes. It's an argument to get them to change their property so the snakes aren't on it,
Mm-hmm.
killed. I have found, and I don't know if this would work in Florida, in West Virginia, we have had a couple cases of the hantavirus, and hantavirus comes from rodents basically breeding in excess, and they crap everywhere, and then the virus lives on the poo dries out, it aerosols, you breathe it in, and it's a nasty thing, and it will kill you.
Wow.
And so all I got to do is bring up the fact that, you might have rodents around your property. The snakes are going to control the rodents, which is going to keep you from getting sick. That argument has worked a handful of times. But there is actually some papers that show out of New Mexico, I think it was, that the incidence of hantavirus in rodents dropped in habitats where there was rattlesnakes, because the rattlesnakes were basically part of the ecological community that was eating the rodents. And when you eliminate the rattlesnakes entirely, you eliminate their contribution to controlling the rodents, which then gives the rodents the opportunity to boom, and then the hantavirus incidence goes up. So, and that's a very utilitarian argument. One of my graduate students actually did it. We studied this. We wanted to figure out how to message to people about rattlesnakes and get them not to kill them. What we found was with adult men, that utilitarian argument is what works. Okay. With women, there's all this science now that points towards rattlesnakes being extremely good mothers. We now know that they do parental care. That's no longer an argument. There's evidence of it. There's been plenty of science. And if you kind of change the story on rattlesnakes from being vicious, venomous animals to doting moms that just happen to be, we can never say they're not dangerous, because they are dangerous, but they're dangerous based off your response to them.
Yeah.
And if you just treat them with respect, they're never going to come after you. And they're good moms. They take care of their young. And so we found with this survey that we did online that we were able to change people's opinions telling that story. If they were female and if they were male, we just talked about utilitarian elements. But the problem is, when you have been taught since you were 3 and you're now 40, 50 years old, this thing's going to kill. It's just very hard to get people to switch their tune. But you can do it. One thing that's really interesting about the people that I live with here in West Virginia, we got a really bad rep, but and I would be lying if some of it isn't deserved. But a lot of the people, we are an outdoors state. If you grow up in West Virginia, with the exception of our capital, Charleston or Morgantown, you grow up anywhere else, you're pretty much running around outside. You're in the creek, you're in the river. You have a very outdoorsy childhood. Even in 2025, you have that. And I have found that if I don't yell, if I'm just folksy, fun Zac, and I have to read my audience and read them well, I can get them to a point where they will at least entertain the idea of not killing the snakes. And I've absolutely converted several. And the other thing that's happened is, this is kind of a nice thing, and I might be a little naive, but I do a lot of work with Gen Z. Gen Z gets a bad rep. Some of it they deserve. I will say that. But one thing that is really hopeful for me about Gen Z is that they are they're huge on making up their own mind on something.
Yeah.
So when I was raised here, I listened to what my parents said, and my parents said was God, and that was the way it was. And the reason why was the parenting in the 80s was a little different. If you didn't do what dad said, he beat the shit out of you. And it was okay. Not that my dad did that, but you know what I mean. With the way we parent now, it's kind of like, well, here's your phone, go explore this topic, come back and talk to me about it, but you can kind of formulate your own opinion.
Yeah.
So in today's world, a young person, they're interested in snakes. They're not necessarily going to talk to the parents about snakes. They're going to get on YouTube and watch Emily and Snake Discovery.
Yeah.
And so they'll formulate their own idea. And so what I found is, when I started teaching at West Lib in 2008, even biology majors, if they came in and they were like, I don't like snakes, 4 years later, they were still probably, I don't like snakes. Now I have a kid and they're like, I don't like snakes. I can reason with them And in a matter of like 3 days, they like snakes now. So that kind of access to knowledge, I think that's going to shift things a little bit. I think there's a generational response that's going to help a lot of animals in the future. And I only think that because I've seen it. Like,
have you seen that kind of across the board with the scientific landscape with young people, and I guess just with people in different or you know, of any walk of life? Have you seen that? Like, how is our current social media society reacting to the scientific landscape? You know, like how is one affecting the other? I had Chris Applin on, and he said that they were dealing with regulations on blue tree monitors because the research that they were citing to basically make it where you couldn't keep these animals was based on 20-year-old research, because a lot of the captive breeding and everything is being documented in social media now and not in scientific literature or in journals that you can put entries into, where you can say, on this date, I got this many eggs and they're this size and so on and so forth. How are we supposed to, as keepers, help the scientific area and try to get the information in there instead of just having these footprints in the snow that is social media, right? You throw up a reel, you celebrate your clutch. I got this many Neos. They all are started. Like, it's super successful, but then they're being regulated because of old research.
Yeah, no, well, we're at 2 hours and 15 minutes. Now we're going to do this for at least 4 hours.
I told you.
This is literally the entire premise to my professional herpetocultural life. So in a lot of ways, social media, I don't want to beat it up. Let's do it this way. The positive element of social media, in my opinion, for herpetoculture is also the negative part of it. But it just depends on whether you're going to be a good witch or a bad witch when you wake up that day. Okay. And that is, there are no borders. Growing up in Glendale, West Virginia, I was the only snake kid. And this was the 90s, and it wasn't cool. I rip on my students all the time. Now you have a snake, and it's like, oh, that's cool. Back then it was like nerd, and you kick you in the face. Like, literally being raised around rednecks was not good.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm like dwelling in the shadows. I oftentimes wonder what would have happened to Zac back then if I did have social media and I could find my tribe. And who knows, my best friend might be some rando kid in Nebraska.
Yeah.
So like that connectivity and finding your people, that's a positive thing that social media brings. But it's also negative because then you can potentially drink the bad Kool-Aid and go down this negative slant. So being able to self-curate, great. And then we've got like groups and things like that. And it's where herpetoculture's communication occurs. The issue is people don't view herpetoculture. We view it as a hobby. Okay. And we call it the hobby. And I don't think there's anything wrong with calling it the hobby. But I have my foot or my toe in the conservation world. I've got it in the academic world. I've got it in this hobby world. I've got it in the personal keeper world. And when it's in the conservation world, that world makes decisions on science. That's it. And the hobby world can't accept it. Okay. What I think needs to happen is that the hobby world and the conservation world need to find a place to come together. So we then have a way to document this stuff so that when the conservation world rolls in and says, we want to take away the blue tree monitors, we have the data to give them, to show them all the hard work we're doing in our basements and garages. And we don't have that. And that's where we get into problems. But the reality of it is we actually do have that. We just don't use it because we've lost the respect for it on the hobby side. Okay. Part of the reason why I love private herpetoculture is private herpetoculture is all about doing. We get an idea in our head, we do it. You want to keep diamond pythons outside, you do it. You figure out how to do it. In the world of science and in the agency world, we have this little thing you do called bureaucracy. So for me to say I'm going to breed an endangered crayfish, I can't just do it. I've got to go and justify it first to this body, this body, this body, this body. And then once I justify it, then I can do it. Well, the justification might take 5 years to 10 years to get to that point. So we've got this freedom over here. But the problem is we're doing this for likes. We're not thinking about the long game. We put up our post showing this amazing thing some guy did or gal did in their basement. And if you would just reach out to a Zac and be like, hey, I think I can write this up, but we don't do that. And then what do? We look at that and we're like, I don't want to do that. That's what those eggheads do. So then we shoot ourselves in the foot. Mm-hmm. And so there are actually outlets for this. I've spent the past 5 years finding one of the outlets is the International Herpetological Symposium, IHS. It hurts my heart a little that today is Tinley. And I saw a video of the line to get into Tinley. And it was, of course, like 200 meters long. Okay. There are going to be thousands and thousands and thousands of people in Tinley today. Okay. IHS, which is the hobbyists' professional way to present their data, it has 110 people going to it.
The last one was 25 minutes from my house, Dr. Zac. I am ashamed to say I did not go. And I think I was sick. I think I had a good reason. I wanted to go, but like the whole family got sick.
Oh, no, that's fine.
But I'm ashamed, that like I didn't put more planning into it. I kind of let the clock run out. And then I was like, I'm talking to all these people that were there. And I'm like, why am I not going to this? I should have been going to this.
Well, but there's another difference, though. IHS to get through the door is $300.
Oh, that was the other thing.
Yeah. You know what I mean? And the reason why it's $300 is there's only 100 people going to it.
Yeah.
You see, if there were 1,000 people going to it, 500 people going to it, then we can cut that price down. But it's just expensive to pay for a hotel, to have a lobby, to have dinners, to bring speakers in and not make them pay. But that's what herpetoculture had in the 80s and the 90s. What people don't realize is that you would go to IHS if you were like an up-and-coming herpetoculturalist. Mike Clarkson talks about this all the time. Like back in the mid-90s, going to IHS was a big deal. And then it's not about buying things. It's about communicating and talking to each other and da-da-da. And there was a journal, so you could publish your breeding, pieces. And so we need that to come back. And because then we would have a way to celebrate our accomplishments in a professional way. And I know a lot of people will be like, well, that's snotty. I don't want to do that. Not everybody has to do it. But if you think about it, if 20% of the really active private herpetoculturalists were to do this, there's so many of us, there's 500 people without even trying. You see what and then if we were to bring back that whole thing about writing, and I understand people can't write, and one of my students is going to find this statement and use it against me. We have this little doodad called AI now.
Yeah.
You can use that to assist you in writing up your findings. I'm not saying to use it. I'm saying to use it as a tool.
You're not using it to write for you. You're putting bullet points in and then turning it into something that's more legible, or, something that you can actually sit down and
so
read.
Now you can't even use the excuse of I can't write. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying? Well, then we need to have the outlet. Well, we do have the outlet. We have things like the Responsible Herpetoculture Foundation that puts out a quarterly journal. And so if those people doing Blue Tremont, I'm not picking on them, I'm just saying here's a scenario.
It was the example I gave you, yeah.
Yeah, if they were to breed their animals, then write up a paper on the captive reproduction of those animals, and then stress the fact that we only want to use these. Maybe we don't need any more from the wild. We will police ourselves. You publish it in that journal. Now a conservation biologist somewhere can find that article and at least cite it. But I can tell you right now, no one's citing Facebook. That's the most idiotic thing on earth.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I feel like if herpetoculture is going to evolve, whether we like it or not, we need to take these tools that already exist and respect them and give them the same admiration we give Tinley, Daytona, Dallas, NARBC, Schaumburg, Pomona, you know? So that's a way that that's to me, that is the missing piece. And that was actually one of the reasons why Colubrid Fest was formed, because, I can bitch about this all I want, or I can actually show it in process. And that's what Clint and I did. Clint does the marketing side. I do the science side. That is actually this insane thought experiment that somehow has become fruition. And that's a testament to Clint, mostly Clint, some of me, because Clint he doesn't live in a world of bureaucracy like I do. So he's just like, let's do this. And so we did. And then we got Mickey, who would actually sponsor it. But I could see very easily, we're only in our second year of Colubrid Fest, right? People now, they're kind of getting it. They understand it. And now I'm getting hit with, maybe we should have 2 days of talks. Maybe we should have competing sessions. I'm trying to figure out a way to maybe sometime in the distant future, 2 years out, maybe we could actually have people present a series of breeding talks, and then we write those things up, and maybe we have a special edition of some herp journal that is that to me, herpetoculture needs to go in this direction. It doesn't have to do a 90 from the direction. It's like, keep the main direction going. But if we don't embrace that, and we don't start doing this soon, it's just our fault when everything is taken away from us. That's my way of looking at it. I know people get really pissy when rules and regulations are put into place, but I also understand that world. I'm a crayfish biologist. I have absolutely helped people come up with bait regulations. So it's very disingenuous of me to be like, you suck for saying we can't keep our snakes. It is a response and effect relationship. If there isn't something that generates the regulation, they're not going to happen in the first place. So if in that world, peer review is valued, word of mouth is not. It's just, and I even understand and respect why they are that way. So yeah, I don't know if that got rambly or not, but that's
no. It's because having that, and Chris told me that, he's writing a book on tree monitors, and he said that he's going to cite my podcast because of information from one of my guests. And he said, I don't know if that's the first time this is being done. And I'm like, that's crazy. Yeah, that's so crazy. Well, but that's like the landscape that we're in now podcasts are the best thing in the world. When I got back into this hobby, I had such I wanted more knowledge, and I was constantly bothering people, right? Like that's what I was doing constantly on social media, Morph Market. I'm like, what locality is this? How big do they get? Blah, 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 and I'm like, and I realized that I was just fucking annoying, and that's why I'm doing this now, because now I can sit down with you and annoy you, but it's not annoying because other people get to benefit from it. So I think that trying to find a way to marry those things together is really important.
No, well, Colubrid Fest works because of podcasts. If there was ever evidence that you can take podcasts to another level, it's that. If nobody knew who Zac Loughman was before CCR was created, I was on a couple podcasts. I guess if you like false water cobras, you knew who I was. That was it. But I feel like now, today, the next evolution of the podcast kind of builds the community, and then these events like Colubrid Fest, that's the annual place we all go to meet each other to actually make the community real, if that makes sense. Because that's the best part about there's snakes there at the show, but if you listen to most of the people that talk about it, they're like, the show was awesome, the show was great, but the best part was meeting all these people. So
I went to Daytona, this year, and it was so much fun being able to see, it's like, oh, it's Dennis McNamara. I got to talk to Dennis now, and even though I'm not buying any animals, I've already bought animals from him, but it's great to be able to just hang out and talk with people and see them in real life. I don't own any colubrids, but I plan on going to Colubrid Fest. Awesome. a good friend of mine is Phil King.
Oh, I know Phil.
Yeah, he's a sweetheart, and
he's awesome.
Yeah, he is, and he's like, he really wants me to go to that. And I'm like, it looks like it would be a ton of fun because it is a balance of sort of selling snakes and also, information exchange and, which is so cool.
Yeah, no.
And education.
The next piece of it I want to figure out is how to bring into it a somewhat formal science piece that doesn't alienate anyone, because that's the problem, is that some people get intimidated and alienated, and you have to definitely curate the people that are talking, because I don't want to ever bring in this uppity piece. And then from there, be able to produce some kind of a periodical or journal or something that then gives it a little bit of street cred with the agency world or whatever. And then we would be able to produce these articles that people can read. Clint doesn't even know about this. I haven't even talked. This is like a expert and idiot exclusive. He's going to listen to this and be like, what the hell? But that's
what are your plans?
But no, I think that we can do that though, because enough people have reached out to me. But what I've learned is, like I said, IHS is not for everyone, and that's fine. But for the contingent of our hobby, where you're data minded, you like the science, you're on the cutting edge, you're doing things, getting that stuff written and getting it out into the published record, that's actually a big deal. And we have that avenue. It's just I don't even know if it's not that it's not respected. I don't know if people even know how to do it, if that makes sense. So that's another part of it. Is just adding literacy as to how you get to that point. But you are right.
Well, I that is sort of where my whole question was coming from. I'm not educated. I was homeschooled, man. I graduated high school and, scraped by doing that. And that was it. I just, so is there a place for uneducated people in this scientific community?
Well, I hate the term uneducated people because you're not uneducated. You don't have formal education.
Yeah.
But I would argue you don't. That's one of the great things about herpetoculture. You don't have to have a biology degree to be a badass herpetoculturalist. You do need a biology degree to be a professional herpetologist. That's like where people don't realize that's where the divide ends up happening in a more applied, pragmatic point of view. I think that I have said to many, many people, there's a massive benefit that comes from people doing herpetoculture that do not have formal training in science. There's also a potential detractor piece to it, but I'm not going to go negative, because you take your life experience and apply it to what you're doing. So, like, great example. If I have to build a cage, I have no construction experience whatsoever. Okay. So when I view building a walk-in enclosure, I don't know how to do that, but I can tell you every single thing that needs to go in there and what the climate needs to be and the microclimates and the lighting and why we have to have the lighting and the distance of the lighting, but I can't freaking do it. But if you're a contractor, you can hear what the science guy is saying and you can make it happen. So that's where this so-called uneducated person's far more educated than me. You see what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
And that is, if you think about it in a herpetocultural setting, that's far more useful than being able to rattle off the subspecies name of everything. It doesn't matter. I can do that if I can't build the thing it needs to live in.
Yeah.
See what so that's where private herpetoculture and not having a degree, I've never viewed that as a negative thing. Now, I will say it gets a little annoying because when I hear like, oh, he's got a college degree from people who don't have degree, like, just shut up. I'm not flexing my degrees on you, so we can all be copacetic and live in the same place. But no, I think that it's an advantage. The diversity of herpetoculturalists is our strength. That will always be our strength. And those backgrounds we have are our strength. We just need to learn how to use each other for good. So, like, if I can't build something, but I got a friend who can build it, you build it, I'll write about it, and then I'll take the data on the animal we put in it, and now we both end up being an author on that paper. Like that to me is the perfect marriage.
Oh, that's so
of how this
cool.
stuff works.
Yeah, that's so cool.
And we can do that. That's the other part of this that people don't understand. There's nothing saying we can't do that.
Yeah. I treat wastewater for a living. So
there you go.
You know, I don't think that benefits anybody in our hobby, though.
There you go. Yep.
But it's important. I know that much.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you're Lisa Farina and
Mm-hmm.
you're breeding white lip pythons, and you have all this data on clutches and egg size and incubation temperatures and duration and all that stuff. What can she do with that information to get it to the scientific community to be able to use it somehow?
I have a case study, a proof of concept for this. And Lisa, love Lisa. So this would directly apply to Lisa. There's a
everybody loves
colubrid
Lisa.
keeping rock star named Kayla Martin. Kayla does oddball colubrids and she does Hondurans. And this past year, she got this obscure snake related to the beak snakes, does the same nasal rubbing thing called an Egyptian false cobra, not a false water cobra, to breed in human care. And she was really good at documenting temperatures, documenting, dates, documenting when things happen. So she was able to get the data. That is the part that is most important, is the consistent gathering of the data. You've got to be able to do that. And that you can train someone to do, like that's not difficult. You have to make sure that they're taking things in the right values. So like centimeters and millimeters, not inches kind of thing, centigrade, not Fahrenheit, but there's even conversions for that. So who cares? And so Kayla got a clutch of these eggs. She did some pretty different techniques for incubating them because these things live in extremely hot deserts. And then she had almost all, if not all the eggs, I don't remember how many, but it was a large number of the eggs hatch. Then she weighed the animals, she fed the animals, but she just took the data. So Kayla, I'm in charge of the advancing herpetoculture session at IHS. And I told Kayla, like this time last year, actually, you are presenting captive breeding of false cobras at IHS next year. She's like, I don't have, degrees, blah, blah, blah. I was like, it doesn't matter because you're going to work with me. I've got the degrees. So you give me the data. I will help make the presentation, but you're giving the presentation. And so she gave me the data. The data was better from Kayla than the data I get from some of my graduate students. So like this whole idea of, I don't have a degree, I can't do this. I think society has told you all you can't do this, but Zac Loughman's not telling you can't do that. You can freaking do this. And so she gave me the data. I know how to make a PowerPoint. So that's my life. So in like a morning, I made a PowerPoint. I think it took me like 90 minutes. And then gave it back to Kayla. Kayla told me I want this changed. I want that changed. Changed it. And then she went to IHS and presented it in front of all these PhDs and everybody.
That's so cool.
That model, like that, I love coming up with these concepts and then showing it can happen. And I've met Lisa. Lisa can definitely do that with Pearl. She can definitely present at the next IHS if she wanted to, captive breeding of southern white lips based off the data she has taken. It's just you got to get the different skill sets. That's all I have with this PhD. If you whittle it all down, I have a certain set of skills.
Yeah.
I can take that data and turn it into a paper. I can take that data and turn it into a presentation. And then since I'm a teacher and I get in front of people all the time, I can present it to the world. But I can't gather that. I don't have false cobras,
Yeah.
So I think that just joining forces and figuring out ways to do this way, it can lead to just nothing but good.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, that's very hopeful. Like it kind of, because I feel like there is so much information out there and a lot of it isn't getting captured, especially after my conversation with Chris Applin. It's like, man, this kind of feels sad, but
no,
we could all help. We could all contribute.
No. And the way the world is now, like there's just no reason for us not to do this. Before COVID, what was it? Skype. if I had to meet on Skype, that was like the scariest thing on earth. I literally can remember my palms sweating at the prospect of me leading a video conference. And now there was a day last week, I had four Zoom meetings in one day. I talked to people in California. I talked to people in Southern West Virginia. I talked to people in Pennsylvania. I talked to people in Kentucky. Like, there's nothing saying you couldn't create a group of like-minded folks that want to write these articles up, that want to like get these little publications up. You just form a Facebook group, limit who the hell goes in there, so you're curating it and keeping positive people in there, and then you have a bi-monthly or a monthly meeting where you kind of keep everybody honest, and you could literally have people in there that write the paper.
My God.
There's nothing saying the person doing the work has to be the person who writes the paper if you can find somebody who wants to write the paper.
Yeah. Well, that's like the Discord for the expert and the idiot. It's for Patreon members. A lot of these questions are kind of things that were thrown out by Patreon members. The cool thing is that it's not free to enter. So you don't have trolls coming in, and you don't have assholes coming in. You have people that are paying for a Patreon membership. They get their early access to the episodes like 4 to 5 weeks in advance, things like that. But then also there's this community where it's a whole bunch of people that have agreed to disagree on certain things and to find common ground and to not be assholes. And it's hard to find that on your everyday Facebook group.
That is the best thing on earth when that happens.
It is.
And so in my mind's eye, we have these little islands of that. You have it in your Patreon group. We have it at Colubrid Fest. It's happening at IHS. The thing that has to happen, in my opinion, is we just have to figure out some way to create continuity, to group all these people together. And then we could actually get a little bit of action and momentum behind it. It would be super cool. Like Responsible Herpetoculture, that journal, they're based out of Ukraine. They were beating my door down 2 years ago to give them articles because they couldn't get anybody to write articles for them. Now I reached out to them and they're like, "Oh, we're good." It's like, all right, cool. But I love that they're there, because that means that people have found them. But there's probably people listening to this when I say Responsible Herpetoculture that is their jam. They just don't know it exists because we don't have a common place for all of the people that like to keep this way, think this way, act this way, be this way, for us all to meet.
Yeah.
And we also live in an insanely distracted world. Like, I used to take great pride in being able to hyperfixate on something for hours on end. And it was about a month ago, it was right after Colubrid Fest, that I realized, like, one of the negatives that social media has done to me is it has fragmented my attention to things. Like, I cannot focus on something for more than 30 minutes right now. And that's a problem. Like, the reason I was able to write that book is I would sit down at like 7 a.m. on a Saturday, and then, other than getting up to go to the bathroom and eat, it's 9 o'clock that night, and I'm like, okay, I knocked out a chapter. Writing this Hognose book has been a pain in my ass because I sit for like 30 minutes, and then my ADHD is just like, I've got to go do something. So, but having a commonality where like we all can motivate each other and keep that from happening, I think that would be a cool thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's what Chris Applin said has made it so easy for him to start working on that book that he's writing, is that where he is now in Indonesia, there's not many distractions.
Yeah.
So like I was kind of jealous when I heard that. I'm like, damn, that must be awesome.
Oh no, I knew that the phone was ruling me a little bit too much this summer. Well, I went to Iowa and was visiting with grad students, and the poor graduate students live in this like tiny trailer in a trailer park. Without the internet is spotty at best, and during the heat of the day, we don't do anything because the snakes are underground. And so we went back to the trailer and we're all staring at each other. And I threw my laptop in a backpack and I walked down to, it was on the Mississippi River. So I found a picnic table under a shelter. It looked like no one had been there for 10 years. And I sat down, and it took me like literal conscious thought to kind of push through that first half hour. And then I was back to me again but I had to literally go to where there was no electricity at all.
Yeah.
And what what stopped my writing was the laptop died,
Mm.
but
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, even editing my podcast,
mhm,
I'll get on my phone and waste time
yeah,
and just checking DMs, and yeah,
mhm,
it's terrible.
yeah.
So that's how the social media has impacted, this landscape, and vice versa. How about, without getting like politically, over the years, how I'm sorry, but over the years, how has different political ideologies and administration changes affected the scientific community?
The well, the I don't even think it's I don't know if this is even a political statement. I just think this is a statement based off some objective data. Since COVID, science has been questioned in ways it wasn't questioned before.
Hmm.
Or it was questioned before, it's just there's a lot of weaponization against it or for it. Uh, I think it's more of a societal thing. We just are tribal now and polarized to no end. Um, like vaccines. I'm going to go there. I don't understand how you can't look at the fact that we come up with with a measles vaccine, and when it is created and presented to the world, and everybody like the people were literally dying of measles, it's viewed as this kind of like, oh my God, that is the greatest thing ever. Because my child may not die now, you know? And
Hmm.
so there it is. And then we go forever without measles. We do not have people dying of measles in our face all the time. And we get real comfortable. And then we start to see like one-offs here, there, and everywhere. And those one-offs now become a reason to question this amazing thing.
Hmm.
Like, as a logical human being, I don't understand. I can't understand it. I don't get it. And now we take away the fact that you've got to get everybody immunized. And what pops up again? Measles.
Hmm.
And now, people are dying of measles again. Like that, huh? And the reason why is the politics involved and this whole idea that scientists have an agenda and the agenda is not for me. It would be disingenuous for me to say that some scientists don't have an agenda. That is absolutely true that some scientists have an agenda. The vast majority of scientists, the agenda is finding fact. That's what we
Hmm.
are all about. And if we get data that says A is not true anymore, we need to do B, then we shift to B. That's it. But some people view that shift from A to B as failure. Like, haha, they didn't know what
Hmm.
they were talking about. Well, no, we didn't have the technology to answer the question. Now we do. And shifted our opinion. Okay. That's literally what science is all about. Science is always about the pursuit of fact. There are species of crayfish I described early in my career. And using the criteria for a species to be a species, they were valid species. Today, over a decade later, that criteria has shifted. I'm literally thinking about writing a paper to sink my own species. You
Hmm.
know, and that's good science. Threw the ego out. So I just can't figure out that part of the whole thing. And then that just led to this distrust of science and scientists and everything else. And it's just weird. Like with environmental science, the whole climate change. It's not really referred to as global warming anymore. It's climate change. So that means some places are going to get colder, some places are going to get warmer, some places are going to get drier, some places are going to get wetter. And like it's happening. I don't know how you can't look at what's going on in the past decade and not say it's happening.
Hmm.
But there's people that want to say, nope, it's just one of these like interglacial cycles or whatever the hell they're called.
Is that
No.
true? Is it cyclical? But are we making it move at a faster rate? Are
Yes.
we accelerating that cycle?
All the evidence in the world is pointing towards it moving at an expedited rate.
Hmm.
And we've got data for that through ice cores, where you can go back in time with glaciers and look at gas that's trapped in the glaciers from different time periods. You can look at fossil record. and see how things shifted and biodiversity wise, and know like the largest extinction event in the history of our planet. It's called the Great Dying. It's literally called the Great Dying. It happened at the end of the Permian. The only thing that the scientists have been able to find is around Siberia, elevated volcanic activity occurred, and CO2 got dumped into the atmosphere, and the world got drier and hotter faster.
Oh God!
And it caused acidification of the ocean. It caused terrestrial ecosystems to shift, and then it caused all those animals and plants and everything to die because there was just too much change too quickly. And that is happening right now. And I grew up in West Virginia. This time of year, it was extremely normal for it to be 50 degrees during the day and like upper 30s at night. We don't get that weather now until November. We just don't. We've also had 3 or 4 500-year floods in the past 3 years.
Holler, because I'm down here in Florida.
Yeah.
Trust me.
And one of them almost took out my house. And that's the part with a landslide down off the mountain. So that's the part of this that I don't understand. Like, put your politics aside. It's hurting people. It's hurting animals. You know, and then there's the defeatist attitude that basically says, well, it's already happened. We can't do anything. That's kind of bullshit. You know, but then people that look at that and go, no, I don't see it. It's just a cycle. Well, yeah. So I don't like to talk about this that much because I get hot quick and then I'll end up with haters everywhere. But trust the damn science, because when you are dying in a hospital one day and there's a doctor taking care of you, they probably have a degree in science. And it is at that moment that your life is literally dependent on a scientist at that point in time. So just a little bit of respect for what we do would be nice.
Yeah, it's difficult. You know, you're in West Virginia. I'm in Florida, so it can be difficult to have because I don't think that these should be political conversations.
No,
I don't know how they are. You know, and I had somebody say to me like, well, if they why are all the banks giving out all these loans for beachfront property to build mansions on there? You know, they wouldn't do that if it wasn't going to be paid back. And it's like, these are the same banks that caused the economic collapse in 08 that we're talking about here, right? Yeah. The ones that were giving out subprime mortgages, those are the same banks, right? That's the same lenders. Right?
Yeah. No.
Because they know the government will bail them out, and no matter what happens. And it's the people that suffer that live in the houses. So you're going to base all of your climate science on loans that are being given out on beachfront property?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah. That's the dumbest fucking argument I've ever heard.
Yeah. No. So this stuff's, it's happening. Like I said, we'll go back to what I said at the very beginning. People just need to relax. Like, stay in your lane a little bit. You know, I don't know anything about building a house. I'm not out building houses. Yeah. I understand how forests work. So I feel like if I understand how a forest works, I should be one of the guys that helps determine how we take care of that forest. You know? Yeah. It's just been it's a very weird time to be a scientist. I will flat out tell you that. This year alone, I had a grant, and then that grant was taken away from me. It was a federal grant. And so now I'm not doing that project, and that's fine. I'm not doing that. I got other projects. We're good. And then it was given back to me because there was a lawsuit and we got the money back. I'm like, oh, okay. So do I do this? And then I'm told, well, wait, because we don't know if they're going to take it back again. And I'm like, okay. And so then we got wind that it wasn't going to be taken back again. So, all right, we're going to move. And so now we're going to move, and now we're getting ready to go. And now the government shut down, and they're like, oh, stop. So like this, as a science person trying to do science with the funding streams that we have, it's been very interesting. You basically, a lot of these projects involve a temporal component. Like, let's see the effect of dam removal on these animals. Well, I've got to study the animals before we remove the dam to know the effect of the dam removal. When you take away the money, then you give me the money, then you take away the money, then you get. I'm not out there studying. So now we're just studying the dam removal part. And I don't even know if we're going to be able to answer that question. But then somebody, some anti-science person is going to roll in and be, look at the crap job Loughman did. Well, I did that because of the political and government state that I was put into. Because in a perfect world, I would do it the way the scientist wants it done. So, because I'm a scientist. But yeah, no, it's a very weird time to do what I do on the science side.
Yeah. Well, keep up the good work. I know I messaged Dr. Julander too, and I was like, hey man, like, keep doing what you're doing. You know, I appreciate you.
Well, the crazy thing is the money I raised at Colubrid Fest, that project's happening. That has no government oversight. Like, if you would have told me in 2025, the only projects that were safe were the ones I raised money for at a reptile show, when I was getting my PhD, I would have looked at you like you were higher than a kite. And that is the actual truth right now.
So that's another benefit, right?
Yeah. Oh, it's a huge benefit. Absolutely massive benefit. Now, I still have to get permits, and I can't go do anything in Iowa. And I have a group of colleagues out there that are wonderful. And, you know, we stay within the confines of our permits and our proposals and things like that. But I don't have to worry about that money being taken away because it's in a nonprofit that Clint and I started. So, and that's great. I was telling my wife actually not the other day. I tell my wife about every 2 or 3 days now. It's really nice having this Colubrid Fest funding because I don't have to like worry about it. Because I was literally getting ready to go off on that dam project, that dam project as we call it now. And the shutdown happened, and I wrote an email off to my people. I was like, "Can I work?" And they're like, "We don't know, so no." I'm like, "Okay." So here we sit.
All right. Well, thank you for doing what you do, and we'll wrap it up. I got two Patreon questions here.
Sure.
I mean, like I said, some of that was already interwoven in. Lisa had, some questions about sort of the whole academic thing and, papers and journals and all that. But this one comes from Jeff Croce. What besides obesity are the bad side effects of overfeeding aside from obesity and short-term and long-term? Okay.
I'm going to answer this question and then I'm going to circle back and add something that I've just learned with the stuff in the field. So the negative side effect is snakes are a tube and they don't have fat the way we have fat. They have literal fat organs inside of them that they deposit their fat into. And so they use that fat metabolically for things like vitellogenesis, for like yolking up their eggs. And they'll use it to get through periods where they don't have food, like a lot of animals do. But the problem is when you kind of get into that obese or extreme obesity point, those organs go from like down near the cloaca all the way up in and around the heart. And so you're quite literally just filling up this tube with a lot of extra tissue that's not associated with anything functional. And so you're now putting literal pressure on kidneys and, the equivalent of a bladder and the intestine and the stomach and the lungs and everything else. And so you're basically smothering them from the inside anatomically. And that's where the problem comes into play. The other problem is that when you start to like eliminate the ability of things like testes and ovaries to swell, when those organs are actually undergoing like a reproductive cycle, they need to be able to move and they need to not have any competition physiologically at the hormonal level. A lot of times you'll get protagonistic relationships with some of the hormones and the amount of fat in the animal. I'm not going to get into how that happens, but it happens. And so you may not get a strong cycle in an overly obese snake, or you may not get a strong, like a large amount of sperm being produced, which obviously is then going to impact the reproductive potential of the animal. So those are kind of the big problems. But this whole idea of power feeding, and for some people, this is going to be controversial. It's not meant to be. I am not talking about boas and pythons. So I know a lot of your listeners are boa and python people, not talking about your snakes. But we have done this field study now in Iowa, and what is involved is beginning in April, we started catching snakes, and we were putting pit tags in the snakes. So when we catch a snake, again, we know who that individual is. And we've got this really swanky database that we can all run out of our phone. So as long as you have your phone, you can have access to the database. Okay. And it's just like making an Amazon order. The cells, we fill in the database for our entries. We take pictures of each animal every time we catch it, and it's all uploaded into the cloud. And so it's really cool. And the students really got, it's just fun to catch an animal. It's a recap. Let's see what it looked like before. And what we found was insane with the growth rate of two species of snake. The blue racers there, which are beautiful, and the bull snakes that we caught there, they grew like, no joke, they increased their size by 200 to 400%. We had racers that we caught in April that were young of the year last year. So they're about this big. Those animals right now in October are all 3 feet to 4 feet long.
Jeez.
Okay. And the bull snakes are even bigger. This has completely uprooted everything I know about feeding snakes. Because we talk about all the time using nature as our benchmarks. Why now have benchmarks? Now, I don't know that many people keep racers, but we do keep bull snakes. And so I had a couple Kankakee bulls that I bought last year as this new pitch obsession. And I have been feeding them what I thought was on the heavy side. They are actually smaller than their wild counterparts. And we know that they were young of the year last year because when I actually wasn't there, when the guys we work with, Don and Jim, caught them, they had a bunch of baby bulls hit the drift fence at the same time because they had literally all come out of the clutch. And they were just fortunate enough to have a drift fence ready to catch them. So, so now my brain's a buzzing because I am starting to ask this question with certain colubrids. I'll put it there. This idea of we feed them too much. I don't know if that's true based off the growth rate we're seeing with these wild snakes. And I'm sitting here thinking holy hell, am I really going to poke that hornet's nest? But would I do that to a boa or a python? No, I would not, because Rick Shine has actually done work with water pythons in the wild. And they grow faster than people realize, but they don't grow anywhere near as fast as those racers and the bull snakes are. But I think we need to look at the biology of everything before we get into this grow them slow mentality. Because I know with colubrids, that's my world. You can absolutely stunt them. They're kind of dumb. If they aren't at a subadult size by 2 to 3 years old, you're not going to get a big one. Example, false water cobras. I have one male. He has been affectionately named Shorty. He lives in my office. He just wouldn't eat, but he ate enough to live. He was very annoying. He was one of those. We all know that snake that you're okay, you're going to be dead this week. And you give him a prey item. You're well, son of a bitch, you ate it. And this snake is 3.5 years old, and he's just now at 3 feet. His brother lives below him, and he's a 6.5 foot monster.
Wow.
He ate 2 prey items a week. See what I'm getting at here? So,
yeah.
But the monster is more indicative of normal based off the field data than the little guy. So I think with ambush predator boas, pythons, the basal snake, sure. That we know that works. With our colubrid friends, though, I'm so intrigued by this. One of my current grad students, I was can you make your thesis this? I know I brought you on to do this, but can we just do this? Because this is so much cooler. And she's actually been yeah, I actually think so. So and have me back on in 1.5 years because we'll have the answer to the question then.
Oh, man. I hope I get you back on sooner than that.
There you
You're
go.
One of my favorite people.
Yeah. No.
You make me wish I went to college.
Oh, there you go. That's my job.
So basically, not so much with boas and pythons, though. Those,
yeah. Boas and python, they got the whole pay before pumping. If they're a python, we know that you can, the blood gets thickened, the heart increases. No to them. But colubrids don't have that.
Hmm.
And it also makes sense. That's the part that it like, okay, so like you're a baby. Some of the like a carpet python's a small baby, but a baby boa constrictor, that's got a little bit of weight to it.
Yeah.
Baby bull snakes are this big. Baby racers are the size of this pencil. There's
Yeah.
not a predator out on that prairie that can't eat them. It makes complete sense to me from an evolutionary perspective to have it built into your biology that you get your ass to 3 feet long in a year and you're just knocking away all these potential predators, off your predation list by growing that fast. So I see why that would be a thing
Yeah.
for them.
All right. Last question. We'll end on this. What are the symbiotic relationships between crayfish, reptiles, and specifically snakes?
Okay. So there's a subset of crayfish. We call them primary burrowers, and they make burrows. And any animal that's making a burrow that gets below the frost line is going to be an animal that a herp is going to utilize. It's what it's making, because that's the number one thing in temperate latitudes that you need things to be able to get below freezing to make it through the winter if you're a cold-blooded animal. And so this digging that they do has basically created a situation where crayfish burrows are utilized by hundreds of different species of reptiles and amphibians. My lab right now, like this was the year that I decided I have a herpetology lab. Up until now, I was like, no, it's insane to have 2 research labs. You have a crayfish lab and you do herp stuff on the side. Then the Iowa project happened. I was like ungodly happy. And I was like, for the love of God, just have 2 labs. But as a scientist, I have to have something that bridges them. So we're actually going to be writing up a great big paper on crayfish and herp relationships. So whoever asked this question, hit me up in 3 years, because that's how long this is going to take. And I'll give you the paper. But there are some species, though, where that relationship's gone to the point of it's coevolution, where basically the evolution of one species is being driven by the other. And there's a species of frog called the crawfish frog that utilizes crayfish burrows as adult retreats and then goes to ephemeral wetlands to lay its eggs. Massasauga rattlesnakes, that's my favorite. They can live without crayfish, burrowing crayfish. It seems that the population levels are higher when in the presence of burrowing crayfish. And we're actually going to be doing some, hopefully, knock on wood, burrowing crayfish restoration to increase habitat for Massasaugas this coming year, which I'm pretty pumped about. But that's it. It's the fact that they got these burrows. And then a lot of a lot of juvenile reptiles and amphibians will use the burrows. They'll actually go down there and hunt. The coolest thing is nobody's really documented turtles using burrows. And we study a lot of burrowing crayfish in my lab. Burrowing crayfish are an absolute bitch to get out of the ground. They dig holes that are like anywhere from 1 foot to 5 foot deep, and you've got to be truly committed to get them out. And my lab's gotten a reputation for this. So I tell, like, even before the herp thing started back up again, I was like, document everything that lives in those burrows. And when we were in South Carolina, we ended up finding out that turtles, of all things, were using the burrows. I never thought a turtle would use it, but stink pots, common musk turtles, they are, when they're juveniles, they're the perfect size to use a crayfish burrow. And the way the burrows work is there's a tunnel and then there's a chamber. And so my students in this particular area around Augusta, Georgia, they kept pulling out stink pots from these turtle burrows. And at the time, they're crayfish people, not herp people. So they were just writing on the data sheets turtle. And it wasn't until like 5 months later, I was reviewing their data sheets for a report. And I called the grad student. I was like, why are you writing turtle on the data sheets? Oh, we found turtles in the burrows. And I like lost my damn mind. I was like, what? Like, that's a paper, for Christ's sake. So yeah, no. So now they know, they find a turtle, they call me immediately. Like, that is a big deal. So yeah, I think that herps use their crayfish burrows way more than we realize. And we know they use them too. So there you go.
All right, man. God dang, you got so much locked up inside that brain.
Yeah, I do, I guess. This was a fun one. I enjoyed this one a lot.
Good. Hey, that means a lot to me.
Yeah.
That means a lot to me.
Well, I love your podcast. I've been binging it in prep for this. And
oh, wow.
Yeah, no, I've learned a lot. You're doing the Lord's work. I don't know how you do by yourself what Clint and I do, as a duo. So that's impressive.
I don't know how people do it together because scheduling is the hardest thing.
Yeah. We just have a night, and that's the night.
Oh, see, that's good. Yeah. If you are structured and regimented and you really have that set in stone, then that's good. But god dang, I've been trying to put together the BOA Symposium Part 2 for, I don't know, like months. Like people want it, and that episode did really well. Oh, thank you. So did I. I mean, it was like, I was like a kid in the candy store, just sitting there listening to such smart people go back and forth. But trying to get 3 busy guys scheduled to come together is, it takes an act of God.
Yep.
But thank you, man. I really appreciate it. Someday I'm going to get a colubrid. I would like to get black milk snakes.
That's a great
at some
one,
point.
Actually.
They're so goddamn cool. And they're even cooler now that you told me that's actually like camouflage. Cause isn't that what we found out about tigers? Like everybody's like, why do tigers stick out like a sore thumb? Like they're a predator, but they're actually to the animals that they're hunting.
They blend right in.
Totally invisible.
Yep.
That makes so much sense now that black milks aren't born saying, don't eat me, I'm venomous. They're born to blend in.
Yeah.
And then as they get older and mature, then they turn big and black and they absorb the sun rays and the heat. And oh man. Yeah. And their natural history is another one that just their environment that they come from is so cool. It's
badass. I've been to Costa Rica several times now. And at the time I wasn't into black milks, and we had a kid. This is ridiculous. He completely blew out his ankle in the hotel. Not in the jungle, not climbing mountains, not wading in the rivers, in the goddamn hotel. So I'm like literally taking boats and riding in jeeps to get him to the emergency room to get a cast put on his ankle the very first day we're in country. And we ended up in Limon, Costa Rica, because we were on the Caribbean side. And, we went to the hospital there. It was nuts. There's like armed guards walking around, barbed wire, but just parrots flying everywhere. It's like, what the hell is going on? And so fast forward, I'm home now. It's 7 months later. I'm looking into black milks maybe, and there's a Limon locality. And I was like, well, shit, that's where I took the kid. So yeah, no.
Oh, wow.
And I've kept them. They're fun. They're easy. You don't need any heat.
Yeah.
Where you live, you just put them on an enclosure at the bottom, put an LED light on them, and you're done.
I know. I want to put them in like a bioactive or something like that. I think it would be so cool.
Yep.
Like a big naturalistic display, and they're just such cool animals. So let me ask you this. Is there anybody, like if I wanted to get like a real black milk snake nerd on, do you know of anybody that is like obsessed with their natural history and they're like not just captive breeding? Because I find a lot of people that are into them captive breeding, but they're not really into their natural history.
Oh, well, there's a guy named Cole Grover, I think. Yeah, okay. Cole. We had him on. We have an episode with him.
Oh, nice.
And then another guy named Aaron. I'm going to say your last name wrong, Aaron. Sorry, Bayer. Those are the two hardcore tropical milk guys.
Okay. Cool. I didn't realize that there was even line bred like locality versions of black milks. That's cool. All right. Well, thank you, sir. Look at that. We're up at 3 hours and 10 minutes. It's 2:44 and seeing you were like, if we're still going at 2:30, what the fuck happened?
There you go. You're right. Yep.
All right. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Thank you.